Chapter 696. Bang, bang, bang. Crisp sounds rang out continuously. The so-called protector did not even last a breath before it was smashed into pieces by the sharp power. The pseudo-divine runes and bone runes burst out with power, but they were still unable to stop it. They all exploded, and the power within overflowed and dissipated into the air. After a while, the remnant power of the bone runes and pseudo-divine runes was all absorbed by Lin Yi. This originally incomparably luxurious palace had also turned into a pile of ruins. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Behind the palace, a passageway was faintly discernible. It's so easy to get through. Seeing this, Lin Yi was stunned. He did not expect that the Forgotten Land would strictly restrict the existence of divine runes. No matter how outstanding one's talent was, one would not be able to break through to the divine realm and would not be a match for the Protector. We finally defeated the Protector. Long live the heavenly god of thunder and fire. God, thank you for your blessings. The people in the village were still kneeling and praying. Lin Ye's face suddenly became ugly. He did not want to waste too much time on this. All right, stop praying. Let's get out of the Forgotten Land quickly. Su Fu sensed Lin Ye's impatience and immediately shouted. In an instant, the people in the village did not dare to continue praying. They all stood up and walked toward the passageway. Lin Yi looked at the backs of the people leaving and could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. It was too troublesome. After sending them out of the Forgotten Land, he would let them fend for themselves and no longer care about them. However, the strange power in Lin Ye's body gradually turned into pure soul power, increasing Lin Ye's strength. Soon, Lin Yi noticed this, and his face became strange. He could finally confirm that the more satisfied this group of people was, the closer they were to the goal they had prayed for. That power could then be absorbed by Lin Yi. This seems to be related to faith. Phew, I really don't know what is going on with the divine realm in this world. I hope that after leaving the Forgotten Land, I can find others. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi waited until everyone was in front of the tunnel before leading Su Fu to open the tunnel. The tunnel flickered with radiance, stretching as far as the eye could see. As far as the eye could see, one could only see a path of light. After sensing for a moment, Lin Yi did not sense any danger and stepped into the passageway. Su Fu followed closely behind. However, the people in the village started to hesitate. They were too weak to believe that they had defeated the Guardians. Thus, when they saw the passageway, they were filled with doubt. They were terrified. What if there were more dangers in the passageway? What if the passageway was a trap? Even after Lin Yi and Su Fu had walked a zhang away, the villagers still did not dare to move. Noticing this, Lin Ye's expression became incomparably ugly. If not for the fact that he had accepted that ball of energy and accepted the prayers of those people, he would have had the impulse to abandon them. A pitiful person must have a hateful side. At this point in time, they were still afraid. It was no wonder that they were so miserable in the Forgotten Land. Lin Yi rolled his eyes. Without waiting for Su Fu to urge those people, Lin Ye's divine sense had already spread out. Like a rope, it abruptly tied them up. With a slight thought, the villagers were pulled into the passageway by Lin Yi, causing everyone to exclaim in surprise. What a strong power! Seeing this scene, Su Fu's heart trembled. Lin Ye's power was not something he could imagine. No more nonsense. Lin Ye's voice was cold. The villagers also felt Lin Ye's anger and did not dare to speak again. Lin Yi put everyone down, but did not disperse his divine sense. Instead, it protected the villagers. This passageway was only a ray of light. On both sides, there was a bottomless abyss under their feet. If something happened, it was hard to guarantee that the villagers would not fall. If there were casualties, Lin Yi was worried that something would happen to that ball of energy. Therefore, he had to ensure everyone's safety. As for Su Fu, Lin Yi did not care much. If he could not even pass this hurdle, he was not qualified to follow him. Similarly, if Su Fu could pass this hurdle, Lin Yi would also give him a good fortune. Through absorbing the bone patterns, Lin Yi already had many deductions and guesses about the cultivation methods of this world. He also had a lot of research. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Everyone began to walk in the passageway. When they walked for a while, the light behind them began to dissipate. An endless abyss appeared and turned into all kinds of evil spirits, revealing their ferocious forms. They glared at Lin Yi and the others on the light path. Clearly, they had defeated the Guardian, and this path of light only allowed the group of people in the palace to pass through. As for the others, even if they came here, they would not be able to summon the light path again. They could only wait for the Guardian to condense again. Similarly, if something happened to the people on the light path, they would not be able to rush out. Looking at those ferocious and terrifying evil spirits, Lin Yi could not help but shake his head slightly. The mechanisms of this world were too simple and crude. If an illusion was set up, it would make people despair. After defeating the Guardian with great difficulty, there was hope of rushing out of the Forgotten Land. A beautiful illusion could trap people and make them unable to extricate themselves until their lives were exhausted. However, although these ferocious demons looked terrifying, those with a strong mind could easily pass through. Even Su Fuwu was not affected. He walked on the light path with a calm expression. However, Lin Yi and Su Fuwu were not affected, but it did not mean that the others could ignore it. Everyone in the village trembled and moved forward with difficulty. Some children even cried and did not dare to move. If it were not for the protection of the divine sense, they would have fallen down the light path many times. Aware of this, Lin Yi was completely fed up. He had already made up his mind to leave these people alone after leaving the Forgotten Land. Even if there were one or two people among them who were fearless and had a fearless spirit, Lin Yi would not abandon them. After all, Lin Yi had not fully explored that mysterious power. However, the hundreds of people in this village disappointed Lin Yi too much. However, no matter how disappointed he was, Lin Yi still had to take care of them at this time. With a slight thought, the divine sense immediately turned into a giant net and completely wrapped up the people in the village. Lin Yi waved his right hand gently. In an instant, the giant net immediately brought the people forward along the light path. After doing all this, Lin Yi turned his head to look at Su Fuwu and was surprised. Su Fuwu had entered a state of enlightenment in the light path. Interesting, this little guy actually noticed it too. Touching his nose, Lin Yi was more and more optimistic about Su Fuwu. Those evil spirits all had fake divine glyphs in their bodies. Moreover, the entire light path contained the power of the fake divine glyphs. Su Fuwu had obviously noticed this, which was why he had entered a state of epiphany. End of chapter. Chapter 697. Lin Yi did not disturb Su Fuwu, nor did he protect him. He only silently stared at him, wanting to see how far Su Fuwu could go. If Su Fuwu could comprehend the pseudo-divine runes in the tunnel, it meant that his talent was exceptional. Lin Yi would not mind letting him follow him. This area was still considered part of the Forgotten Land, and there was a suppression of divine runes. If Su Fuwu could comprehend the pseudo-divine runes in this place, his future would be bright. In an instant, a strange scene appeared in the tunnel. At the front, countless people were wailing and screaming, but they were pulled forward by an invisible force. Su Fuwu's eyes were slightly closed, and he was like a walking corpse walking in the tunnel. Lin Yi yawned, constantly sensing the pseudo-divine runes around the tunnel. Because Su Fuwu was sensing the pseudo-divine runes, Lin Yi did not absorb them into his body, but observed. One had to say that the existence of the pseudo-divine runes was much stronger than the bone runes. Although the bone runes were powerful, there were too many restrictions. The existence of the pseudo-divine runes could make up for some of the flaws of the bone runes, and could even strengthen them. It was incomparably mysterious. I wonder what the divine runes will be like. I hope they won't disappoint me. Slightly shaking his head, Lin Yi did not disperse the evil spirits in the tunnel, but allowed Su Fuwu to comprehend the pseudo-divine runes. The tunnel was long, and after walking for 2 hours, the light was still boundless. At this time, the villagers finally accepted reality. They no longer wailed and silently waited in the tunnel. After another 2 hours, Su Fu ended his comprehension. All the bone runes in his body began to flicker. The bone runes near his chest showed signs of fusing, gradually condensing together. Whoa! The light flashed, and the bone runes fused together, forming a pseudo-divine rune. In an instant, a strange power rippled out from Su Fu's chest. In just a few breaths of time, Su Fu's originally scattered power actually fused together. Although it was not perfect, and he could not control it as he wished, compared to before, it was much stronger. This time, Su Fu's cultivation level did not increase, but his strength was several times stronger. Originally, Su Fu could only use the power of 2 bone patterns at a time. But now, with the existence of the pseudo-divine pattern, dozens of bone patterns in his body fused together. The power that erupted was even stronger than that of an ordinary saint. Sensing this, Lin Yi could not help but frown. Quasi-divine inscriptions were already so powerful, allowing the user to unleash strength surpassing their own. If they were divine inscriptions, wouldn't they be even more powerful? For a moment, Lin Yi was even more curious about divine inscriptions. Thank you, my lord. After forming the pseudo-divine inscription, Su Fu immediately turned around and bowed to Lin Yi. At the same time, Su Fu quietly sensed Lin Yi's strength. When he discovered that he was still unable to sense anything, his heart involuntarily shivered. Su Fu already understood that Lin Yi's strength. Even if he broke through to deity realm, he was also far from being a match. Your talent is not bad. If you perform well, I will give you a chance to comprehend divine inscriptions. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi's mind moved slightly, and the power of divine thought instantly turned into a huge mouth. In the next moment, a surging suction force suddenly erupted. The pseudo-divine inscriptions around the passageway were all sucked into the huge mouth, turned into pure energy, and fused into Lin Yi's body. At the same time, many pseudo-divine inscriptions appeared and fused with the bone patterns in Lin Yi's body. Seeing this scene, Su Fu could not help but sigh. He had only comprehended one pseudo-divine inscription after much effort, but Lin Yi had fused hundreds of pseudo-divine inscriptions with a wave of his hand. This gap was really too big. Sigh. I wonder when I will be able to have the same strength as my lord. Su Fu looked at Lin Yi enviously. Suddenly, the passageway trembled violently. As the pseudo-divine inscriptions that formed the passageway disappeared, the end of the light passageway finally appeared. Looking up, there was a brilliant light at the end. Oh! Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi could not help but have a strange expression on his face. One had to comprehend the power of the pseudo-divine inscriptions to pass through this passageway. It seems that the person who left this passageway also left a way out for the Forgotten Land. If not for me, I'm afraid that even if someone in the Forgotten Land defeated the Guardian, after leaving the Forgotten Land, they would also be killed and might not even be able to survive. With this passageway, once you comprehend the power of the pseudo-divine inscriptions, you will still have the power to fight after leaving. You won't fall too far behind, and you might even be able to slowly develop. After understanding this point, Lin Yi shook his head slightly. Without hesitation, he led Su Fu and the other villagers to the end of the passageway. With Lin Yi around, the passageway was almost unrestricted. Soon, Lin Yi and the rest had reached the end, and they rushed into the light door. Buzz! Everyone felt dizzy, and in the next moment, a strong force squeezed their bodies, causing them to feel excruciating pain. Even Lin Yi was frowning. Fortunately, his body was formed by the power of divine sense, and he immediately activated the 5 spirits divine technique to convert the power of divine sense to the water attribute. In an instant, all the pain disappeared. Lin Yi's vision turned black, and in the next moment, he felt solid ground beneath his feet. He opened his eyes abruptly, and the sun was bright but dazzling. What a big sun. This aura. Oh my God, it's a big tree. It's grass. In an instant, everyone in the village was excited, and they cheered wildly. The surroundings were filled with flowers and trees, and it was very peaceful. Even Su Fuwu's emotions fluctuated when he saw this scene. In the Forgotten Land, it was a barren land filled with ruins and withered land. Where could there be flowers and trees? Therefore, when they saw this scene, everyone was so surprised. The power in this space has also changed. Lin Yi stretched out his hand and felt the aura in the space. He realized that there was a power that was not inferior to the saint energy. That power was very similar to the pseudo-divine runes, but it was different from the bone runes and the pseudo-divine runes. It was contained in the heaven and earth. Could it be that this is the divine rune? If that's the case, the divine runes and the saint energy are of the same level, but I don't know if they can be merged together. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi closed his eyes and felt the aura in the air. Seeing that Lin Yi was cultivating, Su Fuwu did not dare to disturb him, and he immediately shouted to the villagers to stop making noise. After 10 minutes, Lin Yi opened his eyes, and he was shocked. After feeling the aura in the air, Lin Yi was surprised to find that it was the power of sealing. End of chapter. Chapter 698. Buzz. Purple light flowed between heaven and earth, forming a rune in the air. This is the power of the divine rune. Su Fuwu exclaimed, "Oh my God, how is this possible? You just arrived here. How can you comprehend the divine rune?" Divine runes were different from false divine runes and bone runes in that they had to be comprehended from heaven and earth. Moreover, there were many restrictions. Lin Yi had just arrived in this world and had only meditated for a short while. Yet, he was able to comprehend the power of the divine rune from heaven and earth and form the divine rune. Su Fuwu could not believe it. Buzz! Light flashed, and the divine rune slowly entered Lin Yi's body under Su Fuwu's astonished gaze. In an instant, Lin Yi felt as if his entire body had been upgraded. Even his soul and spiritual force had been greatly enhanced. It seems like the power of the divine rune and spiritual force can coexist. It probably won't repel saint power. This time, everyone who enters Sky Market will be able to comprehend the power of the divine rune. We've struck it rich. At this moment, Lin Yi finally felt the enhancement that Sky Market had given them. Opening his eyes, Lin Yi glanced at Su Fuwu and said, "Don't be surprised. Once I understand this divine rune, I'll let you study it." "Thank you, sir." Hearing this, Su Fuwu was ecstatic. The divine rune was the power extracted from heaven and earth. Everyone's understanding of power was different, and the power of the divine rune they comprehended was also different. Generally speaking, even if they were master and disciple, they would not easily reveal their divine rune. After all, the divine rune contained your power, including your strengths, weaknesses, and weaknesses. Once someone studied it, it was equivalent to handing over your life to others. One could comprehend many bone runes and false divine runes, but many people could only comprehend a few divine runes. Those who could comprehend more than 7 divine runes were peerless geniuses that were hard to come by in a million years. Those who could comprehend more than 9 divine runes were overlords even in the 9 states. As for those who could comprehend more than 9 divine runes, they only existed in legends. Hence, Su Fuwu was very grateful that Lin Yi was willing to let him study the divine inscriptions. Slightly nodding, Lin Yi got up and glanced at everyone in the village. He then said in a deep voice, "I've done what I promised you. Thank you, Lord God. Thank you, Lord God." After he finished speaking, everyone in the village bowed respectfully. Within Lin Yi's body, that ball of light suddenly appeared and actually turned into a rain of flowers that filled the sky, sprinkling down. Buzz! As the flower petals rained down, the auras of everyone in the village increased by more than 2-fold. Everyone was overjoyed. They thought that it was Lin Yi's credit, so they kowtowed again. Even Su Fuwu was shocked. He could feel that his strength was increasing at an astonishing rate. In less than 10 minutes, Su Fuwu's aura had already reached the peak of the heavenly being realm. As long as he could comprehend a divine mark, he could break through to the legendary deity realm. This made Su Fuwu extremely excited. That was the realm that he had always dreamed of. Lin Yi also did not expect that after completing the prayers of everyone in the village, there would be a change in the energy. The flower petals were not only effective on Su Fuwu and the rest. Lin Yi also felt an increase in strength. His divine will quietly stabilized at the peak of level 59. In this way, Lin Yi was completely confident that he could break through to level 60 in the sky market world. After absorbing the energy of the flower petals, Lin Yi was still a little worried. After carefully sensing for a long time and confirming that the energy in the flower petals was extremely pure, he was finally relieved. If this group of people had a little backbone and could use their special abilities to condense such energy, I would have chosen to bring them along. Unfortunately, although Lin Yi was very interested in the mysterious energy, this group of people really disappointed him. Slightly shaking his head, Lin Yi glanced at everyone in the village and said indifferently, "Get up. I've already done what I promised you. Since you've left the Forgotten Land, you should find your own place. Leave." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the village was stunned. They all knelt down and kowtowed again. God of heaven, are you abandoning us? God of heaven, we want to follow you. We'll serve you forever." Along with the sound of the prayer, another ball of light filled with a special power condensed and floated in front of Lin Yi. However, this time, Lin Yi was not moved. On the contrary, he was furious. "You are really too disappointing." With a cold expression, Lin Yi waved his hand and broke the ball of light. He shouted coldly, "You're really too stupid to place your hopes on others." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi did not linger. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Su Fuwu, speeding off into the distance. Only the people in the village were left in a daze. Their faces were filled with astonishment. They could not believe that Lin Yi would reject them so straightforwardly. As a matter of fact, Lin Yi did not want to part with them so soon. After all, they had just left the Forgotten Land, and their strength was too weak. Since Lin Yi had already decided to be a good person, he might as well help them all the way until they were safe. However, the group of people had disappointed Lin Yi too much. He left in a fit of anger. As for whether they lived or died, it would depend on luck. Su Fuwu, who was being carried by Lin Yi, rolled his eyes. He had already figured out Lin Yi's temper. This caused him to be terrified. Luckily, he did not ask for anything out of line. On the contrary, he had displayed his outstanding ability, which made Lin Yi decide to bring him along. A moment later, a small island appeared in his sight. There were many buildings on the island, with many fake divine runes scattered around. It was obvious that there were people on the island. Realizing this, Lin Yi immediately sped up and rushed toward the island. Not long after, Lin Yi and Su Fu landed on the island. They saw a chain that extended toward the mountain range that they had just come from. Beside the chain, there was a stone tablet with a few big words carved on it, "Forbidden Land." Lin Yi frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "The place that we just came out of seems to be the Forbidden Land. This should be a force. Perhaps it is related to the Forgotten Land." Lin Yi rolled his eyes and immediately understood this point. He immediately led Su Fuwu and continued forward. Soon, several guards in tight clothes appeared and were guarding a teleportation spell. "Who are you? Who are you? How dare you trespass on the Forbidden Land of the Violet Rainbow Island?" Almost instantaneously, the guards also noticed Lin Yi and Su Fuwu, and they all shouted out, glaring angrily at the two. Su Fuwu could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Lin Yi, on the other hand, walked toward the guards calmly. "Do you want to die? Stand there." The guards' faces darkened. Suddenly, a bright light shone from their bodies. That was a fake divine rune. End of chapter. Chapter 699. What? They are only in the soul movement realm. How can they comprehend the pseudo-sacred runes? Su Fuwu cried out in surprise. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the guards. Although it was impossible to comprehend the pseudo-sacred runes in the Forgotten Land, it was recorded in the ancient books that even in the outside world, the pseudo-sacred runes could only be comprehended after a certain realm. Beginners could not withstand the power of the sacred runes, and could only cultivate the bone runes. However, these guards were not very strong, but they had comprehended the pseudo-sacred runes. This shocked him. Don't make a fuss. Lin Yi waved his right hand and ignored the guards. They were just pseudo-sacred runes. Even if they had comprehended the sacred runes, what could they do to him? You are courting death. Seeing that Lin Yi did not stop, the guards' faces turned cold. They shouted, and the pseudo-sacred runes on their bodies exploded. Numerous sharp wind blades pierced through the air and attacked Lin Yi. Clang! However, the moment the wind blade came into contact with Lin Yi, it dissipated, causing the guards to be incomparably shocked. How can this be? With furrowed brows, the guard once again unleashed their false divine inscriptions. This time around, the color of the wind blades was several times deeper than the previous one. The wind blades were like sharp blades, slamming into Lin Yi's body. Bang, bang, bang. However, the result was the same. The wind blades could not even stop Lin Yi's footsteps and turned into fragments. Not good. A strong enemy is attacking. Quickly release the signal flare. The guards' faces changed, and they took out a cylindrical object from their chests. You dare to call for help? Su Fuwu's eyes turned cold. He had already calmed down. He knew that these guards were weak. He immediately put his hands together, and a silver moon flashed across the guard's arms. In the next moment, screams rang out. The guard's arms were broken and fell to the ground. Whoosh! However, one of the signal flare was still activated. It rushed into the air and exploded into bright fireworks. Damn it! I don't care who you are. How dare you barge into the Violet Rainbow Island? Only death awaits you. The guards held their broken arms, and their faces twisted in pain. They glared at Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. As long as the elders are here, you will die. Sir, how should we deal with them? Su Fuwu asked softly. At this moment, he had completely calmed down. Wait. Lin Yi looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes in anticipation. He could sense a powerful aura in the distance. Hearing this, Su Fuwu was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he quietly stood behind Lin Yi. He was full of confidence in Lin Yi's strength. Not long after, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. Raising his head to look, he was shocked to see several figures rushing over from afar like lightning. Lin Yi focused and felt the footsteps of those people. He suddenly realized that although they were powerful and their energy fluctuations were comparable to that of a sage, their physiques were very weak. They were even weaker than those in the creation realm. Even when they were rushing, they were relying on the power of the divine inscriptions. They did not rely on their physique or saint power. The third elder is here. Ha ha! With the third elder here, this group of people can't escape. When they turned their heads around, the guards were overjoyed. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they looked at Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. Especially Su Fuwu. His arms had been cut off. Their hearts were filled with hatred. If not for the fact that they knew they were no match for Su Fuwu, they would have rushed forward. Shut up. Su Fuwu's face turned cold as he glared at the guards. Being glared at by Su Fuwu, the guards felt their hair stand on end. They could feel the cold, murderous intent. They kept retreating and distanced themselves from Su Fuwu. They then realized that Su Fuwu was powerful. Although he was not as powerful as the elders, it would be easy for him to kill them. Su Fuwu's face was gloomy. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Yi didn't say anything, he would have already killed these noisy guards. Buzz! The divine inscriptions exploded. 3 figures stepped on the light of the divine inscriptions and landed in front of Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. Who are you? Why are you trespassing on the forbidden area of Violet Rainbow Island? The 3 elders' faces darkened as they stared at Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. Soon, the expressions of the 3 elders turned strange. Su Fuwu was not weak, but to them, he was not worth mentioning. He was only at the peak of the celestial realm. He had not even comprehended the divine inscriptions. Any one of them could crush him. However, they could not underestimate Lin Yi. They could feel that there was a power in Lin Ye's body that made them tremble. What made them even more afraid was that they could not sense Lin Ye's exact cultivation level. Even if someone was stronger than them, they could roughly sense their opponent's strength. However, Lin Ye gave them the feeling that he was like an abyss in the sea. He was unpredictable. Therefore, they did not dare to act rashly. If there was only Su Fuwu, they would not even say a word. They would just kill him directly. "You are not qualified to know my identity." Lin Yi stepped forward and asked calmly, "Where is this place?" Hearing this, the three elders looked at each other with astonishment. "Boy, you don't even know about Violet Rainbow Island." "Humph, since you came here by accident, leave quickly. We will not pursue this matter with you." The three elders' faces darkened as they spoke. "Elder!" The guards' faces changed slightly. They quickly shouted, "Elder!" These two people walked out of the forbidden area. They must have stolen something from Violet Rainbow Island. And they even chopped off our arms. "Elder, you must avenge us." As they spoke, the guards glared at Su Fuwu angrily. "Shut up." Hearing the guards' shouts, the three elders' faces turned cold as they shouted angrily. One of the elders rolled his eyes and noticed the coldness on Lin Ye's face. He suddenly attacked. The divine inscriptions turned into several sharp daggers and slit the necks of the guards. "Pucci, Elder, you." Their necks were slashed by the dagger. The bodies of the guards trembled as they stared at the elder in shock. Soon after, their bodies fell heavily to the ground. "How cruel!" Su Fuwu frowned and stared at the three elders. He felt a chill in his heart. He didn't expect that the three elders would even kill their own people. In addition to being surprised, Su Fuwu had more confidence in Lin Ye's strength. Just by standing there, he was able to force the three deity realm experts to kill their own people to appease Lin Ye's anger. What realm was Lin Ye's strength at? End of chapter. Chapter 700. The three elders of Violet Rainbow Island stared at Lin Yi with gloomy faces. They could sense that Lin Ye's strength was shocking. Therefore, they would rather kill a few guards than become enemies with Lin Yi. Of course, this did not mean that they were afraid of Lin Yi. They just did not want to get into trouble. "Brother, they were the ones who provoked you. Now that they are dead, if there is nothing else, please leave this place as soon as possible." The elder in the middle said, "Violet Rainbow Island does not welcome outsiders." "Phew." Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Did you not hear what I said? I will say it one last time. Tell me, where is this place?" Hearing this, the three elders' smiles disappeared. They glared at Lin Yi and said coldly, "Brother, don't think that we are easy to talk to. This is Violet Rainbow Island. If you want to cause trouble, Violet Rainbow Island will not be afraid." The three elders stared at Lin Yi angrily. Although Violet Rainbow Island was not very famous, it was still well known. Even many true gods did not dare to act presumptuously here. Lin Yi asked them where they were in Violet Rainbow Island, which made them angry. "It seems that you're not going to listen to reason." Lin Ye's eyebrows twitched. His voice was cold. Behind Lin Yi, Su Fuwu's mouth twitched. He suddenly felt sorry for the three elders. Su Fuwu guessed that Lin Yi was not from this world and did not know where this place was. He just wanted to ask for directions. However, the three elders didn't know that this place was Purple Rainbow Island, but Lin Yi didn't want to know the name of their sect, but the name of this area. The topics that they were talking about were not on the same channel. The three elders did not know and thought that Lin Yi was playing with them. "Damn it, third elder, let's fight it out with him." That's right. Although our Violet Rainbow Island isn't a peak force, when have we ever suffered such humiliation? They actually dare to toy with us. If I don't kill them, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. The three elders glowered at Lin Yi as the power of the divine inscriptions gushed forth from their bodies. Tens of divine inscriptions shimmered with resplendent light, revolving around the three of them. Their strength wasn't weak, and each of them had already comprehended 3 to 4 types of divine inscriptions. This caused Su Fuwu to be slightly taken aback. "You want to fight?" Raising an eyebrow, Lin Yi took a step forward. The divine sense in his body surged and suddenly enveloped the 3 elders. Of course, The three elders didn't know that. They only felt a chill on their backs, but they didn't see the specific power. Attack! Our violet rainbow island can't stand such humiliation. The third elder glared at Huang Xiaolong, raising his right hand. In the blink of an eye, a divine rune transformed into a giant, flaming dragon, roaring as it charged towards Lin Yi. Sharp daggers appeared all over the sky, and like raindrops, they crazily fell towards Lin Yi. A giant wolf appeared and waved its sharp claws, creating a sonic boom. Buzz! However, before the attack landed, the divine sense that had enveloped the three elders suddenly appeared. Lightning radiated from it, and in an instant, countless electric arcs burst forth. Crackle! Lightning flashed, and the surging divine sense broke through all the attacks of the divine inscriptions, crashing into the three elders. Bang! In an instant, the three elders felt as if they had been hit in the chest by a giant hammer, and they were immediately sent flying, spitting out blood. They had cultivated the divine inscriptions, and their mental strength was extremely strong. However, their physical bodies were too weak. Although Lin Ye's physical body was formed by the divine sense, the power of the lightning was no less harmful to his physical body. Moreover, their strength was only at the middle stage of the Saint Realm, and the gap between them and Lin Yi was too great. They couldn't withstand the attack at all. They didn't die immediately because Lin Yi had shown them mercy. However, even though that was the case, the three elders were still extremely shocked as they looked at Lin Yi in shock. You? Who are you? Are you here to seek revenge on Violet Rainbow Island? The three elders curled up their bodies and kept retreating. They looked at Lin Yi with fear in their eyes. When they thought of the possibility that Lin Yi was here to seek revenge, their faces turned ghastly pale. Seek revenge? Lin Yi laughed coldly. I have no quarrel with you. Phew. On account of your strength, I will give you one more chance. Tell me, where is this? If you don't speak, you can only be reunited in hell. When they heard that, the three elders' faces changed. One of them gritted his teeth and said, Bastard, I would rather die than be humiliated by you. That's right, there are no cowards in Violet Rainbow Island. We would rather die than be humiliated. As they spoke, two of the elders looked at each other. They raised their hands, which were shining with divine inscriptions, and slapped their own heads. Stop! Suddenly, there was a thunderous roar. When the two elders heard that voice, they were overjoyed and lowered their hands. Lin Yi and Su Fuwu looked up and saw a figure floating towards them from afar. The figure was covered in purple divine inscriptions and could not be seen clearly. However, the power of the purple divine inscriptions gave Su Fuwu a familiar feeling. Who are you? Why are you trespassing on Violet Rainbow Island? The person shouted. You have hurt the elders of my island. Apologize now. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. Oh. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and glanced at the purple divine inscriptions. He suddenly laughed and said, Interesting. If you think that you can trap me, you can try. Allah Master, be careful. This guy is very powerful. When the three elders heard that, they reminded Su Immo, I understand. Divine inscriptions. Seal. As he shouted, the purple divine inscription spread out like a giant net and wrapped around Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. Su Fuwu felt a chill in his heart. He quickly took a few steps back and hid behind Lin Yi. Lin Yi did not dodge. Instead, he took a step forward and faced the purple divine inscriptions. Is this guy courting death? Seeing this scene, the three elders, including their island master, were all stunned. They looked at Lin Yi with astonishment. Since this guy is so arrogant and dares to take the initiative to face the purple divine inscriptions, he can't blame anyone. Then, the three elders began to snicker coldly. Only the supreme headmaster frowned. An ominous premonition arose in his heart. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, the purple divine patterns that filled the sky rippled and actually condensed, transforming into a round ball that spun on Lin Ye's finger. What's going on? The three elders were stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Their faces were filled with disbelief. No, Why can't I control the divine inscriptions? The island master was shocked. When he looked up, his pupils constricted and he exclaimed, "My divine inscriptions seal." End of chapter. Chapter 701. Be Aster's star, what did you do? The island master gritted his teeth and glared at Lin Yi. Give me back my divine rune. Oh. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and twirled his index finger with a smile. The purple divine rune on his index finger formed a ball and spun continuously. Su Fuwu swallowed his saliva and looked at Lin Yi's back. His heart was filled with respect. He did not expect the divine rune to be so obedient in Lin Yi's hands. The divine rune was something that even heavenly gods could not fully control. They could only use its power. However, Lin Yi was actually able to make the power of the divine inscription so obedient. This was truly astonishing. Su Fuwu was not the only one who was surprised. The island master and the three elders were terrified. They did not expect that an expert of Lin Yi's level would appear in front of them. Phew, Lin Yi said indifferently. It's just a divine rune of sealing. It's not like I don't have it. As he spoke, Lin Yi raised his left hand and another purple divine rune appeared. That divine rune was the one that Lin Yi had comprehended after coming out of the passageway. You impossible. How can you have the divine rune of sealing? Could it be that you are also from the Guardian tribe? As he spoke, the island master realized that he had said something wrong and quickly covered his mouth. However, he still stared at Lin Yi. However, this time, the enmity in his eyes was much less. Guardian tribe? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and suddenly thought of a possibility. This violet rainbow island was so close to the passageway out of the Forgotten Land. Could it be a tribe that was responsible for guarding the passageway of the Forgotten Land? If the seal of the passageway was not stable, it could be reinforced so that the Forgotten Land would be sealed forever. With this thought and the island master's words, Lin Yi was certain. It's just a divine rune of sealing. Isn't it easy to comprehend it? Lin Yi said indifferently, You are the island master of Violet Rainbow Island? Not bad. The island master nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, I'm the island master, Fan Shiji. What are you doing here on Purple Rainbow Island? I'm just passing by. Lin Yi rubbed his nose, then suddenly grinned and said, Since you're the island master, then it's easy to handle. Tell me, where's this place? Otherwise, I'll send everyone on your island to hell. What is this place? Frowning slightly, Fan Shiji sensed that something was amiss. Even the third elder was stunned. Right now, Lin Yi clearly knew that this was Purple Rainbow Island. So why did he still ask where this place was? Could it be that Lin Yi really didn't know and wasn't playing with them? While Fan Shiji and the third elder were hesitating, the other two elders were so angry that they roared, Bastard, you want to play and humiliate the people of Violet Rainbow Island. Dream on. Cough, cough. Su Fuwu coughed and said abruptly, You've all misunderstood. What my lord meant was, where's this place? What? Hearing Su Fuwu's words, the island master and the third elder's lips twitched. Indeed, they had guessed correctly. It wasn't that Lin Yi was playing with them, but that they had misunderstood Lin Yi's meaning. However, what made them depressed was that there was someone who didn't even know about the Nine Heaven State. You're lying, right? The two elders were also stunned and looked at Lin Yi in shock. Huff! The island master rolled his eyes and said in a deep voice, This is the easternmost land of the Fire Worm State. Fire Worm State. Is the Divine Fire Academy still around? Hearing that, Su Fuwu asked abruptly. The Divine Fire Academy still exists, and it's still an overlord. Speaking of this, the island master and the rest of them had a solemn look on their faces. The Divine Fire Academy was the #1 overlord in the Fire Worm State, and no one dared to offend it. Even the Violet Rainbow Island was like a child in front of the Divine Fire Academy. Why didn't you just say it earlier? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and continued to ask, Is your Violet Rainbow Island related to the Forgotten Land? Forgotten Land? How is that possible? The Forgotten Land is a place where all the sinners of the 9 Heavens 10 lands are imprisoned. How could it be related to our Violet Rainbow Island? As soon as he said that, The three elders laughed bitterly. It would be great if we could really manage the Forgotten Land. Only Fan Shiji wore a wry smile. I didn't ask you. Sensing Fan Shiji's bitter smile, Lin Yi stared at Fan Shiji and said in a deep voice, "Tell me, what is your relationship with the Forgotten Land?" All right. Fan Shiji glanced at Lin Yi and felt the cold, murderous intent in Lin Yi's eyes. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Actually, I am a descendant of the Guardian clan. Our mission is to strengthen the seal of the passage and guard it at the same time. If someone escapes from the Forgotten Land, we kill him. Of course, if he can comprehend the divine runes in a short time, we don't need to care. As expected, nodding slightly, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "Then do you know where the other descendants of the Guardian clan are?" "I don't know." Fan Shiji laughed bitterly. "Back then, after our ancestors received the mission, they left their homeland and came here to establish a force. Now, thousands of years have passed. How can we still know about the past?" "Phew, then forget it." Lin Yi touched his nose and continued to ask, "In this so-called fireworm state, how is your violet rainbow island strength?" "First rate." Two of the elders said proudly, "There are not many forces that can defeat our violet rainbow island." "Phew, then this fireworm state is really weak." Lin Yi sighed. In an instant, the three elders and Fan Shiji's faces turned ugly. They wanted to refute, but when they thought of Lin Yi's terrifying strength, they didn't dare to speak. Lin Yi was right. They were indeed too weak. One person suppressed their entire sect. "How is your strength in the fireworm state?" Lin Yi glanced at Fan Shiji and saw that he was about the invincible Saint Realm. He immediately asked, "How many people are stronger than you?" On the surface, there are a total of 5 people who have reached the true God Realm. Fan Shiji laughed bitterly. But secretly, there are about 20 people. Many of the sect's ancestors are breaking through to the true God Realm. No one knows if they have succeeded. Even our great elder is breaking through outside, and we don't know if he is alive or dead. The true God Realm should be the great sage realm. Phew, there are only 20 or so. It seems that with the strength of Knight Een and the others, they can dominate this world. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "I plan to rest here for 2 days. Help me do something. If you do well, I can give you some benefits." End of chapter. Chapter 702. What is it? Fan Shiji looked at Lin Yi in confusion and laughed bitterly. "Sir, you are so powerful. Why do you need our help?" "Cut the crap. Just do what I ask you to do," Lin Yi said in a deep voice. "First, help me find more books about cultivation. Second, help me find some people. They are about the same age as me. Every one of them has the strength of the true God Realm. It is rare to see such people in the fireworm state. If there are any, you will definitely find them." Hiss! Hearing this, Fan Shiji and the 3 elders looked at each other and sucked in a breath of cold air. The true God Realm was a realm that they had been hoping to reach for hundreds of years. However, Lin Yi's words hit them hard. A group of people who had broken through to the true God Realm at such a young age. A group. "Sir, may I ask if you came from above the 9th heaven?" Fan Shiji suddenly asked through gritted teeth. "Is the passage above the 9th heaven still open?" Above the 9th heaven? Lin Yi frowned slightly and turned to look at Su Fuwu, only to see that Su Fuwu also had a surprised expression on his face. According to the books that Su Fuwu had read, the 9 states was the peak. The God Realm was the supreme expert. When did another above the 9th heaven appear? Could it be that it was another region that had split off in the past tens of thousands of years? Yeah, this place, even true God Realm powerhouses are so rare. It should be that celestial deity realm powerhouses all went to another world. Su Fuwu was surprised, but he was not sure. After noticing Lin Yi's question, he immediately shook his head. "Phew, what is above the 9th heaven?" Lin Yi touched his nose and said softly, "Tell me everything you know." Fan Shiji suddenly understood when he heard Lin Yi's answer. Lin Yi did not know what was above the 9th heaven. He sighed and replied, 10,000 years ago, all the experts in the 9 states who had reached the true God Realm including the God Realm experts, went to explore the depths of the starry sky. However, they never came back. We never heard from them again. We thought that they had all met with mishaps. But 6,000 years ago, powerful experts emerged from the depths of the starry sky. They spread shocking news that there were other worlds on the other side of the starry sky. Those experts from before attacked that world. However, there were very strict requirements to enter that world. Either they have extraordinary aptitude and can light up the path to the stars, following the path opened up by the ancients and safely tread the path. Or, I can only carve out a path in the endless starry sky. What kind of pressure is the starry sky? Even celestial gods wouldn't dare to say that they could kill their way through it. Thus, even though we know of the existence of that world, we don't dare to rashly go there. Those who can go there are all outstanding figures in the 9 prefectures. After another few thousand years, several mighty figures of the 9 states contacted the people on the other side of the starry sky. They used supreme treasures to open up a brand new passageway and sent their respective forces over. However, opening up the passageway requires a huge amount of energy. As more and more experts arrived on the other side of the starry sky, no one in the 9 states could open up the passageway anymore. This time, seeing how powerful you are and how young you are, we thought that you came from the 9 heavens on the other side of the starry sky. Speaking of this, Fanshiji couldn't help but sigh. Linyi finally understood why the so-called 9 prefectures was so weak. A mere saint could become the leader of a force. The great sage was even an overlord. It was truly shocking. After all, the great sage's strength was barely enough to be an elder in the world he came from. The 9 heavens, their strength should be between the heavenly saint and the absolute saint. Phew, no matter what, it seems to be slightly weaker than our world. If there's a chance, I can go to the 9 heavens to take a look and find out their strength. Narrowing his eyes, Lin had a question in his heart. This sky market was clearly a world created by the top experts of the 4 forces. Why did it have a complete worldview and a brand new cultivation system? It didn't feel like a world that was created. Instead, it felt like they had come to a world that had existed for a long time. However, Lin didn't have any evidence at the moment. He could only suppress these thoughts in his heart and wait until he got out to tell the elders and the others. Sir, what else do you need us to do next? Fan Shiji asked curiously. No need, Lin Yi said in a low voice. Go and find the traces of the others. Remember, once you find them, you must inform me immediately. Don't have anything to do with them. Also, bring me all the books about cultivation. Yes. Fan Shiji and the others hurriedly responded. They didn't dare to reject Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi was too powerful. They didn't dare to resist, as they were afraid that Lin Yi would attack them. Not long after, Lin Yi and Su Fuwu were escorted to Violet Rainbow Island by Fan Shiji and the 3 elders. When the disciples on the island saw this scene, they were all stunned. They kept guessing the identity of Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. Fan Shiji and the others were really terrified. They arranged the best room for Lin Yi. As soon as they sat down, a disciple brought them the books about cultivation. The disciples were especially curious and kept looking at Lin Yi and Su Fuwu. In their opinion, Lin Yi and Su Fuwu's cultivation level was high. Why would they need to read the most basic cultivation books? After taking the books, Lin Yi gave another order and chased everyone out. Phew. After Fan Shiji and the others left, Lin Yi's mind moved slightly and the power of his divine consciousness immediately enveloped the entire room. The purple power of the divine rune appeared and floated in front of Su Fuwu. Sir, this is... Su Fuwu swallowed a mouthful of saliva in surprise. This is the divine rune. Try and see if you can comprehend it. Lin Yi said indifferently. Your cultivation level has already reached the bottleneck. After comprehending the power of the divine rune, you should be able to break through to the divine state. Thank you, sir. Su Fuwu's heart was filled with gratitude. Initially, he had thought that Lin Yi would wait for him to do a few more things, or at least pay a higher price before handing over the divine inscriptions to him. Who would have thought that Lin Yi was so generous? After breaking through to the divine state, I also have something for you to do. With a wave of his right hand, Lin Yi flipped through various books and seriously comprehended the cultivation system of this world. Different from the Forgotten Land, any cultivator in the 9 prefectures could comprehend the power of the divine rune between heaven and earth. However, when they were weak, their bodies couldn't withstand it and could only absorb the pseudo-divine runes. As for the bone runes, they had long abandoned them. Only a few unique treasure techniques could catch their attention. In a chapter. Chapter 703. The divine inscriptions were the cultivation system of this world that had existed for hundreds of thousands of years. They were extremely profound. Lin Yi spent 10 days trying to understand them. However, Lin Yi did not realize that when he was looking at the various divine inscriptions, he had unintentionally merged all the divine inscriptions into his body. In the normal cultivation system, everyone could only merge a few types of divine inscriptions. According to historical records, the most talented person could only merge 9 types of divine inscriptions. That was the limit. However, Lin Yi had unknowingly merged all the divine inscriptions recorded in the book into his body. The pseudo-divine inscriptions and bone pattern fragments that he had previously comprehended had all evolved and improved. There were even some that had evolved into complete precious skills. Lin Yi did not realize this. In his heart, he was completely captivated by the complete cultivation system. With such a complete system, there is an 80% chance that this world is the real world. Could it be that this is the other continent that Biluo mentioned? Or is it the world of my cheap master? No, the strength of this world is too weak. A mere sage is called a god here. Even the god of heaven is only comparable to a heavenly sage. I'm afraid that Elder by alone could sweep across the continent. It is definitely not the world of Biluo and the rest. If this is really a new world, then it will be interesting. After muttering to himself, Lin Yi had a rough understanding of this world. He put down the book and walked out. He spread out his divine sense and immediately sensed the situation on Violet Rainbow Island. There were still people guarding the forbidden area. The rest were patrolling the island. As for Fan Shiji and the rest, there was no trace of them. Su Fuwu, who had followed him out, was cultivating at the side and comprehending the power of the divine inscriptions. It had to be said that Su Fuwu's talent was not bad. In 10 days, he had comprehended the divine inscriptions. His aura was surging, and he could break through to the divine state at any time. Sensing this point, Lin Shuyu's spiritual sense instantly enveloped Su Fuwu as traces of divine inscriptions started to appear around Su Fuwu. Boom! Like a flood that was about to pour out, the moment Su Fuwu came into contact with the power of the divine inscriptions, the bone inscriptions and pseudo-divine inscriptions in his body all started to tremble, and then they cleansed and acted as his body. All of the bone runes fused together, turning into a brand new power, enshrouding his body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The surging energy continued to surge, and a moment later, a purple divine inscription appeared on Su Fuwu's body. As Su Fuwu broke through to the divine realm, his energy rippled out like a tidal wave, causing the entire Violet Rainbow Island to tremble violently. Shwa! Su Fuwu's eyes snapped open as divine runes appeared within his body, releasing a terrifying pressure. However, in front of Lin Yi, that pressure was completely useless. When Su Fuwu saw Lin Yi, he hurriedly dispersed the divine inscriptions, and the pressure instantly dissipated. Thank you for your help, sir. Su Fuwu stood up and revealed a fawning smile. According to his original progress, he still needed a few more days to break through. The moment Su Fuwu opened his eyes, he figured out the reason for the sudden surge of power. It's nothing. Lin Yi nodded slightly. Have you been cultivating for the past few days? Not really. Su Fuwu said in a low voice. A few days ago, I was just comprehending the divine inscriptions. 4 days ago, I started to break through. Not bad. I have seen the cultivation in your world. Those who can comprehend the power of the divine inscriptions and successfully condense them within a month are considered geniuses. It seems that your talent is not bad. Lin Yi revealed a shocked expression and then asked, "Then do you know where Fan Shiji and the rest are now?" "Sir, Fan Shiji and the rest have obeyed your orders and are outside scouting for information." Su Fuwu blinked and said in a low voice, "It's been almost half a month. They should be back soon. I hope they can get some useful information." Lightly nodding his head, Lin Yi cast a glance at Su Fuwu. When he saw that Su Fuwu had only comprehended a single type of divine inscription, he immediately condensed a few more types of divine inscriptions for Su Fuwu to comprehend. However, when Su Fuwu saw the densely packed divine inscriptions on Lin Ye's body, his entire body froze, and his face was filled with disbelief. "See, sir, you actually comprehended so many types of divine inscriptions? 1 type, 3 types, 9 types, 10 types. Heavens! Sir, how did you comprehend more than 10 types of divine inscriptions?" Su Fuwu was stunned, and his mouth was slightly open. Even an egg could be stuffed into his mouth. I comprehended so many divine inscriptions." Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly, but he did not notice anything strange. Just now, he subconsciously wanted Su Fuwu to understand more about the divine inscriptions. Looking down, Lin Yi was also shocked. He saw that Su Fuwu's body was covered by densely packed divine inscriptions, and it was impossible to see how many there were. It was no wonder that Su Fuwu was shocked. Isn't it said that everyone can comprehend at most 9 types of divine inscriptions? How did I comprehend so many?" Frowning, Lin Yi was rather surprised. He did not know when these divine inscriptions had merged into his body. "Wait a minute." Su Fuwu swallowed a mouthful of saliva and suddenly asked, "Sir, it seems that half a month ago in the Forgotten Land, you were still learning the bone inscriptions." "That's right." Lin Yi lightly nodded his head. "In other words, in just 10 days, sir, you actually comprehended hundreds or even thousands of types of divine inscriptions." Heavens, according to the ancient records, there are only 300 types of divine inscriptions in the entire Jeojo continent. Even after tens of thousands of years of development, there are at most 1,000 types of divine inscriptions. Could it be that, sir, you have comprehended all of the divine inscriptions? Su Fuwu was stunned. In his heart, he had completely made up his mind that even if he died, he would follow Lin Yi. He had a premonition that if he could follow Lin Yi, perhaps his life would undergo a huge change. Such a monstrous and terrifying existence. Even if he could only follow him for a few months, it would be a huge improvement for him. Not to mention other things. Just in this half a month, not only did he escape from the Forgotten Land, but his cultivation level had also increased by leaps and bounds, breaking through to the divine realm. Now, with so many divine inscriptions for him to comprehend, he was confident that he could make another breakthrough in a short period of time. This was the benefit that Lin Yi had given him. Phew, I think when I was looking at the cultivation history of this world, I unintentionally merged all of the divine inscriptions that were born into my body. Touching his nose, Lin Yi guessed. Other than this possibility, Lin Yi could not find any other reason. Hiss. Just by looking at the cultivation history once, you were able to merge all of the divine inscriptions into your body. Sir, you are indeed a genius. Su Fu hurriedly flattered Lin Yi, but very quickly, he was surprised again. However, in the cultivation system, everyone can only comprehend 9 types of divine inscriptions. Sir, how did you break through this point? Into Chapter 704. The power of the divine inscriptions was extremely strong. Even a legendary heavenly god realm experts could only contain 9 types of divine inscriptions. Su Fuwu was shocked by the divine inscriptions on Lin Ye's body, and he was envious of him. If he could know more ways to fuse divine inscriptions, he might be able to become a sovereign realm expert. Lin Yi was also a little surprised. After recalling for a while, his expression suddenly became strange. He suddenly remembered that in this world, the stronger the physique, the more divine inscriptions one could fuse. However, Lin Ye's body was completely formed by his divine inscriptions, so he didn't have to worry about his physique. This way, As long as he could comprehend the divine inscriptions, he could fuse them into his body. After understanding this point, Lin Yi glanced at Su Fuwu, whose eyes were filled with hope, and said in a low voice, "Your physique isn't good enough. You can't do this. However, I will think of a way to help you increase your strength." Lin Yi sighed. "Maybe my friends are all above the 9 heavens. This area is too weak after all. They don't even have heavenly gods. They probably won't come here." Hearing this, Su Fuwu couldn't help but be disappointed. However, he was immediately shocked by Lin Yi. When did heavenly gods become cabbages? How could they be called weak? Not to mention heavenly gods, there probably weren't many true God realm experts in the 9 prefectures. Forget it. You should comprehend these divine inscriptions first and see how many you can fuse. Seeing that Fan Shiji and the rest hadn't returned yet, Lin Yi had nothing to do, so he decided to help Su Fuwu increase his strength. He picked out 10 or so divine inscriptions that were easy to comprehend for him. Su Fuwu understood Lin Yi's intentions and worked hard to comprehend them. Time slowly passed as he worked hard. 5 days later, Su Fuwu comprehended 2 more types of divine inscriptions. One was a flame, and the other was a light shield. Just as he was about to comprehend the 4th type of divine inscriptions, his physique couldn't take it anymore. Although Su Fuwu's foundation was very solid and he had Lin Yi's help, he had just broken through to the divine realm. It was already very rare for him to be able to fuse 3 types of divine inscriptions. Normally, only those at the peak of the God realm would be able to fuse 3 types of divine inscriptions. Even those at the peak of the God realm who had just entered the God realm would only be able to comprehend 1 or 2 types of divine inscriptions. It could be said that Su Fuwu's strength had already surpassed the vast majority of people at the peak of the deity realm. Crossing realms to battle was absolutely not a problem. After all, not everyone could have a helper like Lin Yi who could condense divine runes for you to see at close range. After the cultivation ended, Lin Yi was very satisfied with Su Fuwu's improvement. After all, half a month ago, Su Fuwu was only a half-saint. Now, he was no weaker than an ordinary invincible saint. Of course, in this world, Lin Yi relied on the power of his divine perception and the thousands of divine inscriptions to increase his strength by tens of times. At this time, Fan Shiji and the others finally returned, bringing with them a lot of news. A young man had appeared in the Green Cloud continent. He was still young, but his strength was comparable to that of a divine realm expert. He had stirred up a storm in the Green Cloud continent, and even almost wiped out the orthodoxy that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. In the Ocean continent, a force rose up and took over the orthodoxy and forces of the entire continent with extreme means. Among them, the orthodoxy that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years was destroyed and left the Ocean continent, fleeing to other continents. As for the other 7 continents, including the Fire Python continent, nothing major had happened. However, there were also many strange things. Moreover, almost all the seals of the Forgotten Lands in the 9 continents had loosened. Especially in the Ocean continent, there was no news of the Guardian clan in it. That's right, in the past half a month, Fan Shiji had sensed danger. With the help of the power left behind on the island, he ran around the other 8 continents and looked for the other Guardians. However, there was no news of the Guardian clan in the Ocean continent. The Guardians of the other 7 continents had been contacted. Although there was not much of a problem, their seals had also loosened. They worked together to seal off the 7 passages, and it was much more stable. Of course, sealing off those passages did not mean that Fan Shiji dared to attack Lin Yi and send Lin Yi and the others back. My lord, it seems that the Green Cloud continent is the most suitable candidate for the person you are looking for. By the way, when I came back, I suddenly found a group of ants in the forbidden area, but they had a special aura. I want to ask, are they your subordinates? Fan Shiji carefully reported to Lin Yi, afraid that Lin Yi would attack him if he was dissatisfied. Lin Yi waved his hand and said casually, "You can do whatever you want with those people. It has nothing to do with me. I brought them out. Whether they can survive in this area or not depends on themselves." "Yes, my lord." Fan Shiji's heart trembled. and he could not help but feel lucky. As expected, that group of people was related to Lin Yi. Fortunately, he did not act rashly. There's a problem with all the seals in the forgotten land of the 9 continents. A monstrous youth appeared in the Green Cloud continent, and a mysterious force appeared in the Hylon continent. Could it be that there is someone else like me who came from the forgotten land? Frowning, Lin Yi did not lock up that group of people. His thoughts were in a whirl as he thought about the connection between him and the other 8 continents. No, absolutely impossible. Although the forgotten land is huge, I have spent so much time investigating all the places, and there is no news of the other powerhouses. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi suddenly looked at Su Fuwu and asked in a low voice, "Could there be 9 forgotten land? You're just one of them?" "Impossible," Su Fuwu replied in a low voice. "There is only one forgotten land, and there are indeed 10 passages in it. 9 lead to the 9 continents, and one is a special passage that is rarely seen in 100 years. If that is the case, the problem with the other 8 continents should be inside them, and not the forgotten land. Could it be that someone wants to break open the forgotten land and release all the people sealed inside?" Hearing this, Fan Shiji's expression changed drastically, and he cried out in alarm. If that is the case, when the people who have been imprisoned inside for a long time come out, their hearts will be filled with hatred, and they will take revenge on the whole world. This is not good, not good. Although their strength is low, that is because of the restrictions between heaven and earth. In such a difficult environment, their talent and willpower will definitely not be weak. If they're allowed to live in the 9 continents, when their strength increases, it may be a disaster. The more he spoke, the more embarrassed Fan Shiji's expression became. Lin Yi glanced at Fan Shiji and was rather surprised. He did not expect this guy to think so far ahead. Yes, if someone brought the people from the forgotten land out, perhaps they would not have much hatred in their hearts. On the contrary, they would be filled with gratitude. However, if the seal of the forgotten land was broken, and they escaped by themselves, then the situation would be different. End of chapter. Chapter 705. Sir, what do you plan to do next? Fan Shiji quickly reacted. Lin Yi was still here, so he carefully observed Lin Yi's expression. Let's go to the Sangyan continent first and meet that young genius. We'll talk about other things later. Lin Yi glanced at Fan Shiji and said indifferently, "What do you want to do?" Fan Shiji really wanted to go to the other 8 continents to carefully investigate the seal, but on second thought, his own strength was too weak. If he could protect Lin Yi's thigh, perhaps he could suppress the matter of the seal. From Lin Yi's attitude towards the people who came out of the forgotten land, Fan Shiji could see that Lin Yi did not have much affection for the forgotten land. Thinking of this, Fan Shiji immediately knelt down on one knee and said in a low voice, "I only want to follow, sir. If you want to follow me, I'll naturally give you the chance." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi said indifferently, "Give the order to continue investigating the other continents. Once you find a young genius, inform me immediately. Come with me to the Tsangyun continent first. After seeing that young man, I'll help you solve the problem of the passage." In fact, the reason why Lin Yi helped Fan Shiji solve the problem of the passage was not because of Fan Shiji, but because he had a premonition deep in his heart. If the seal of the forgotten land was broken, perhaps what happened in this world would affect the continent he was in. That was why Lin Yi chose to make his move and nip all the dangers in the bud. Before that, I'll increase your strength first. Glancing at Fan Shiji, Lin Yi immediately summoned several divine inscriptions and condensed them in the air. It had to be said that Lin Yi had too many divine inscriptions. When Fan Shiji saw them, he was shocked, even more so than Su Fuwu. Su Fuwu had already seen Lin Yi's monstrous talent, but this was his first time seeing it. So many divine inscriptions. Gulp. The sound of saliva swallowing could be heard. Fan Shiji's face was full of disbelief. He could not help but pinch himself. It was extremely painful, but it also made him understand that what was happening in front of him was real. It wasn't an illusion. This level of strength seems to have already surpassed that of a heavenly god. For a moment, Fan Shiji no longer dared to have any disrespect or other thoughts towards Lin Yi. Try and see how many types of power you can comprehend. Once you're done, we'll set off. Lin Yi's expression was indifferent. Su Fuwu, continue to consolidate your strength. Yes, sir. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Su Fuwu hurriedly agreed. Fan Shiji woke up and knelt on the ground with a bang. He kowtowed several times to Lin Yi. Thank you, my lord. I will work hard to comprehend it and serve you in the future. Under the huge temptation of increasing his strength, Fan Shiji completely threw everything to the back of his mind. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to follow Lin Yi and serve Lin Yi loyally. The corners of Su Fuwu's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he saw this scene. In this way, he didn't have much of an advantage. Moreover, with someone competing with him, the benefits he could obtain in the future would be greatly reduced. However, Su Fuwu didn't dare to say too much. He knew that Lin Yi had many things to do and needed sufficient manpower. However, he was nervous in his heart. After expressing his gratitude, Fan Shiji didn't hesitate and started to comprehend the power of the divine patterns in the air. One had to admit that although Su Fuwu's talent was strong, he didn't grow up in this world after all. The divine patterns had a repulsive force to him. Fan Shiji comprehended 3 types of divine patterns in a mere 3 days. Adding to the ones he comprehended previously, he had already comprehended 4 types. This kind of talent wasn't considered weak in the 9 continents. How many true God-level existences had only comprehended 1 type of divine pattern? Those who could fuse 9 types of divine patterns were all recorded in the books as outstanding experts who suppressed an era. After completely fusing 3 types of divine patterns, Fan Shiji's strength also rose to the late true god level. His strength wasn't inferior to an ordinary peak true god. Shortly after, Fan Shiji led the way in front, bringing Lin Yi and Su Fuwu towards the Blue Cloud continent. Violet Rainbow Island wasn't considered weak in the Fireworm continent. With Fan Shiji leading the way, there were no obstructions. They directly passed through the teleportation array and crossed over to the Blue Cloud continent, which was tens of millions of miles away. After all, Fan Shiji's previous news was from a few days ago. After Lin Yi and the other 2 arrived at the Blue Cloud continent, they didn't directly search for traces of the youth. Instead, they went to the city's restaurants to inquire about the news. In this world, a restaurant was a rare thing. The food inside was made from the meat of all kinds of prehistoric demonic beasts. The wine was brewed by advanced cultivators, which could improve the physique of cultivators. The most important aspect of comprehending divine patterns was the strength of one's physique. Hence, almost every restaurant had countless cultivators patronizing it. It could be said that business was booming. Noticing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but rub his nose. He had an idea in his heart. The things that this restaurant provided weren't rare. Any disciple in Cebu Gakuen could enjoy them. However, the people from the other forces wouldn't be so lucky. After all, not everyone was as rich as Cebu Gakuen. If he could move the restaurant over and operate it in the various cities, it might become popular. Of course, the most important thing in establishing a restaurant wasn't to make money, but to gather information. With so many cultivators gathered together, the topics they talked about were definitely not trivial matters. Instead, they talked about various things that happened among cultivators, either exploring ruins, strange things, or some gossip. Everyone knew about the Theta Scarabii. Linking them together, it was a complete information network. After understanding this point, Lin Yi's breathing became hurried. If he could establish an information network in the Tianlan True Dominion as soon as possible, everything that happened in the Tianlan True Dominion would be under his control. As expected, Lin Yi and the other 2 only stayed in the restaurant for 2 hours before they obtained the information they wanted. 3 days later, the young man who had suppressed the entire Azure Cloud continent would challenge the #1 orthodoxy in the Azure Cloud continent, the Heaven's Gate. It was said that the young man's fiancée had died at the hands of a Heaven's Gate disciple. His own sect had also been forced by the Heaven's Gate. A few years ago, the young man had been suppressed by the Heaven's Gate. He had left his own sect and this continent to cultivate desperately. Finally, his strength had increased. He wanted to seek revenge from the Heaven's Gate. After hearing this news, Fan Shiji wanted to leave. However, he was stopped by Lin Yi and continued to stay in the restaurant to listen to the news. Perhaps the young man's fame was too great, so it took a long time for people to talk about other things. However, most of them were about the destruction of sects or the mysterious appearance of unknown experts. Then there were the ruins. There was no news about the other young geniuses that Lin Yi wanted to know. On the contrary, there was a lot of gossip about the young man. End of chapter. Chapter 706. Rumor had it that in the past few decades, the young man had painstakingly cultivated and finally met a confidant. Unexpectedly, that woman was the daughter of an elder in the Elysium. Now that the matter had been exposed, that woman was summoned back by the sect and forced to marry the genius disciples of other sections. After hearing this news, Lin Yi was almost certain that the young man was a native of this world. How long had they been in this world? How could so many things have happened? This made Lin Yi rather disappointed. He did not expect that with the strength of Purple Rainbow Island, they could not find any useful information. Could it be that the people who came with him all went to the so-called beyond the nine heavens? That teleportation array was definitely not wrong. Lin Yi, Qin Yue, Yi Yin, and the others were definitely teleported to a world. Although Biluo was not there and could not be contacted, Lin Yi was sure that this was not an illusion. It seems that I can only find the way to the beyond the nine heavens. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi had already made up his mind. After staying for a while, Lin Yi did not find any information about the beyond the nine heavens. He was too lazy to stay any longer and immediately left the restaurant. Although that young man was not from the continent of Lin Yi still wanted to go to the Elysium. After all, the Elysium was the #1 orthodoxy in the Azure Cloud state. If he wanted to go to the beyond the nine heavens, he had to get clues from them. Ordinary people did not even know what the beyond the nine heavens was. As for the seat of the Elysium, it was even easier. He could get the answer by asking anyone. At the peak of Sky Mountain, the #1 orthodoxy in the Azure Cloud state, the Elysium. According to legend, in the depths of Sky Mountain, there was a heavenly palace hidden. Of course, no one knew if this heavenly palace really existed. 3 days later, at the bottom of Sky Mountain, Lin Yi and the other two wore bamboo hats and sat on a bamboo raft, fishing. Since he knew that the young man was not from the Divine Continent, Lin Yi was not in a hurry. He wanted to see what kind of power the high-end combat power of this world could unleash. He leisurely fished at the bottom of Sky Mountain, waiting for the battle between the young man and the Elysium. They were not the only ones. Over the past 3 days, tens of thousands of cultivators had rushed over from afar and gathered around Sky Mountain, waiting for the show to begin. The Heavenly Gate was an orthodoxy that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years in the Azure Cloud continent. Everyone was curious about their background and wanted to see what kind of strength the Heavenly Gate had. Very quickly, the entire Heavenly Mountain was occupied by cultivators. Almost every mountain peak and even a mountain range was filled with people. What was even more laughable was that outside the Gate of Heaven, some people were even lying in front of the guards, waiting for the arrival of the young man. The guards didn't know whether to chase them or not, so they had no choice but to close the door. On the bamboo raft, Fan Shiji could not help but feel helpless as he looked at the figures that covered the mountains and plains. Isn't it just challenging a mountain gate? Is there a need for so many people to come? By the way, sir, are you sure you don't want to go up and take a look? If we're any later, there will be too many people and we won't be able to go up. Fan Shiji looked at Lin Yi in confusion. In his opinion, Lin Yi's strength was exceedingly high, and there was no need for him to do this. If I want to know what's going on up there, why should I go up there? Lin Yi shook his head slightly and shushed Fan Shiji. He did not want Fan Shiji to say anything more and just fish in peace. Fan Shiji had no choice but to fish while sizing up the heavenly gate. His goal was to explore the seal of the Forgotten Land, and he only hoped that the matter here could be resolved quickly. At the same time, at the peak of Heavenly Mountain, the interior of the Heavenly Gate was filled with festive settings. All the elders were gathered in the main hall. One of them had a white beard, but the skin on his face was very clean. The aura in his body was surging, and several divine runes appeared on his body. Damn it, this brat did this. He's simply courting death. Now that so many cultivators have gathered here, if we drive them away forcefully, perhaps public opinion will be disadvantageous to us. Another elder sighed and said, "Our heavenly gate is no longer what it used to be, and with the existence of that person, we have to keep a low profile. If they want to come, then let them come. Humph, if that brat Yifeng really comes, I'll skin him alive." Another elder said angrily, "He deceived my daughter and dares to cause trouble on the wedding day. Phew, I wonder if the people from the Flying Feather sect will dare to come and fetch the bride? With such a big lineup, I don't think they'll dare to come." An elder sighed and said, "Sect Master, what should we do today?" As his voice sounded out, all of the elders turned their gazes towards the person in the middle. The elder raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the crowd. He said softly, "It's just a child. Do you have to be so flustered?" Hearing this, many of the elders could not help but look embarrassed. Although it was a child, Yifeng's strength had already surpassed theirs. Of course, the sect master of the Heavenly Gate was still much stronger than Yifeng. Wait until noon, when the Heavenly Gate opens, set up the scene, play the joyous music, and wait for the people from the Flying Feather sect to come and fetch the bride. If they don't come, send someone to destroy them in a few days. His voice was filled with a biting chill. Yes, many of the elders felt a chill in their hearts. They did not dare to resist and stood quietly on the spot, waiting for the time to come. A moment later, the scorching sun hung high in the sky. Several elders stood up and left the hall, instructing everyone to set up the scene in the Heavenly Gate. Not long after, the sound of joyous music rang out. The gate opened and a red carpet rolled down the mountain path, spreading all the way to the foot of the mountain. Seeing the red carpet, many of the cultivators who came to watch the show were shocked. They did not dare to believe that the Heavenly Gate dared to continue the wedding at this time. "Hiss, I heard that although Yifeng is young, he is already a peak true God Realm expert and has comprehended 6 or 7 types of divine inscriptions. His strength is extraordinary. At this time, the Heavenly Gate still dares to continue the wedding. Are they trying to provoke Yifeng? There is already a deep hatred between the two sides, so what's there to provoke? Hee, this time, I'm afraid the Heavenly Gate will be in big trouble. A crazy Yifeng. I'm afraid they can't handle it." However, although the wedding is going on, will the people from the Flying Feather sect dare to come? At this point, the crowd could not help but hesitate. Yes, would the people from the Flying Feather sect dare to come? However, regardless of whether the people from the Flying Feather sect dare to come, all the cultivators avoided the red carpet. No one dared to walk on it. Yifeng dared to provoke the Heavenly Gate, but it did not mean that they dared to do so. Unless Yifeng could defeat the Heavenly Gate, they would not dare to be disrespectful to the Heavenly Gate. Otherwise, they would at most come to watch the show. As the joyous music reverberated, everyone's gaze turned to the Heavenly Gate. Rumble, bang, bang. Suddenly, the Heavenly Mountain shook violently. A thunderous sound kept reverberating in everyone's ears. Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. Their pupils constricted. The sound of cold air being sucked in rose and fell, echoing between heaven and earth. End of chapter. Chapter 707. Boom, boom, boom. Sky Mountain trembled as the rumbling continued. Everyone turned around to look, and all of them sucked in a cold breath. A gigantic bronze coffin appeared on the horizon and was heading towards Sky Mountain. With every step he took, Sky Mountain would tremble. A crack would appear on the plain. Gasp. Oh my God! How can a coffin move on its own? Is he stupid? There's someone under the coffin. How dare he bring a coffin to Sky Mountain? Could the person under the coffin be Yifeng? Oh my god, Yifeng is here. He's really here. No wonder he's an elite at the peak of the true god realm. He's not even afraid of the sky gate. Instantly, everyone sighed and took a few steps back. No matter how powerful Yifeng was, at least he had done something that no one would dare to do. On the bamboo raft, Lin Ye's state of mind was also broken. He looked over curiously. Following his gaze, he could vaguely see a skinny figure under the bronze coffin. He was dragging the coffin and walking towards Sky Mountain step by step. With every step he took, the mountain shook. Even the river that Lin Yi and the other two were in was shaking violently, interrupting their fishing. Phew, how troublesome. With a sigh, Lin Yi waved his right hand. In an instant, a sky full of divine inscriptions surged out from his body and disappeared into the water. Then, the power of the divine inscriptions blossomed and stabilized the entire river. It no longer trembled. As for Sky Mountain, Lin Yi did not protect it. He wanted to watch a good show. Why would he act so early? However, even this was beyond Fan Shiji and Su Fu's imagination. They were incomparably shocked as they stared blankly at Lin Yi. Boom, boom, boom. Yifeng carried the bronze coffin with both hands and walked toward Sky Mountain. In a few breaths' time, he was in front of the red carpet. Huh! With a soft shout, Yifeng exerted strength in his arms and suddenly threw the bronze coffin into the air. He adjusted the direction of the coffin and stepped on the red carpet with his right foot. Boom! The bronze coffin fell, but it was caught by Yifeng with one hand. He waved it a few times, bringing about a cold gust of wind. Hiss! That bronze coffin is capable of causing the entire mountain range to tremble. It must weigh several tens of thousands of pounds. It's already shocking that Yifeng can carry it. And now you're using it as a weapon? Heavens, just how powerful are Yifeng's arms? Look at his hands. They seem to be flashing with divine power runes. To be able to cultivate the divine force runes to such a level, it's truly terrifying. Phew, the divine power rune that I cultivate can only lift things that weigh 1,000 kilograms. Seeing this scene before their eyes, everyone was incomparably horrified. They immediately had a clear understanding of Yifeng's strength. However, when Yifeng stepped onto the red carpet, a thunderous roar exploded from within the gate of heaven. Who dares to ruin the Elysium's plans? As soon as he finished speaking, dark clouds gathered in the sky, and many divine runes appeared. Crackle, crackle, thunder rumbled. Dozens of sharp attacks, including cold winds and sharp flaming blades, were mixed in with the thunder and lightning as they slashed toward Yifeng. The violent power wreaked havoc, and in an instant, the entire area fell silent. However, before these attacks could land, Yifeng had already waved the bronze coffin to meet the attacks. In front of everyone's horrified eyes, the bronze coffin collided with the attacks. Everyone could not help but close their eyes, not daring to look. Buzz! The expected loud noise did not appear. Everyone was shocked, but when they opened their eyes to take a look, they were stunned. They saw that the bronze coffin was emitting a strange light, absorbing all the attacks. Yifeng's expression did not change at all. He continued to wave the bronze coffin, stepped on the red carpet, and walked along the mountain range toward the peak of Sky Mountain. Boom! The thunderous sound was heard again. This time, the divine runes turned into several ferocious tigers. They roared, waved their sharp claws, and pounced on Yifeng, who was walking in the mountain range. Whoa! Boom! 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 The giant tigers that were formed by the divine runes were extremely ferocious. As they waved their claws, they created a strong wind, causing a strong wind to blow. The trees on the mountain range were blown away. Some of the weaker spectators could not withstand the force. They could only cling tightly to the stone walls and other objects to hang on to the mountain range. Buzz! However, no matter how powerful the giant tigers were, when they came into contact with the bronze coffin, they were absorbed again. They did not cause any harm to Yifeng. That bronze coffin is a treasure. Oh my God! What kind of treasure is that? It can even absorb such powerful attacks and come out unscathed. At this time, the spectators stared at the bronze coffin, their eyes full of greed. Not only them, but Lin Yi, who was in the lake, was also shocked. Even he felt some pressure from the previous attacks. He did not expect the bronze coffin to absorb them so easily. It seems that the bronze coffin is not of a low grade. It is at least an upper grade supreme sacred artifact. It is similar to my sky-devouring mirror. However, it is too big, and it is a little troublesome to carry around. Lin Yi touched his nose and did not say anything. He continued to watch. The people from Heaven's Gate did not seem to believe in heresy. Many divine runes appeared continuously, and various attacks fell. However, they were all absorbed by the bronze coffin. What was more shocking was that after so many attacks were absorbed, the bronze coffin did not change at all. No one knew how powerful it was. The people from Heaven's Gate were also shocked. They stopped attacking and waited silently for Yi Feng to step into the mountain range. Hee, is Heaven's Gate admitting defeat? TSK, it seems that a good show is about to begin. I wonder if Yi Feng is more powerful, or if Heaven's Gate, which has been passed down for 10,000 years, is more powerful. Yi Feng is really ferocious. He actually managed to do this all by himself. However, why do I feel that he is still lacking if he wants to go against the entire Heaven's Gate? Indeed, Heaven's Gate is a sect that has been passed down for 10,000 years. They must have a protective array and many hidden cards. It is said that the previous leader of Heaven's Gate is not dead. He is only in seclusion. What? The previous leader is not dead? I heard that he was already at the peak of the true God realm a few hundred years ago and had merged the power of 7 divine runes. If he is not dead, then how powerful would he be now? Therefore, it is still unknown whether Yi Feng can defeat Heaven's Gate. However, it is already very impressive that he can do this. He is so young, and he already has such power. If he is allowed to cultivate for a few more days, I am afraid that there are not many people in Jiuzhou who can defeat him. Baidu search 81 Chinese websitio. No advertising message. Chapter 708. Boom, boom. Yi Feng's face was cold. He did not care about the crowd's words as he walked towards the peak of the mountain. In less than 10 breaths, Yi Feng carried the bronze coffin to the entrance of the Heaven's Gate. More than 10 figures with shining runes stared at Yi Feng. Let him in. A voice that sounded like it came from the depths of hell echoed in everyone's ears, causing their scalps to go numb. In an instant, the dozen or so figures opened up a path for him. Yi Feng was not worried at all. He strode in and walked towards the main hall. Looking at the festive scene around him, Yi Feng's face became even colder. At this time, the onlookers stopped talking and just stared at Yi Feng. They were very curious whether Yi Feng would fall out with the Heaven's Gate. The Heaven's Gate had been passed down for 10,000 years. It was an orthodoxy that suppressed the entire ash cloud state. It was so powerful that ordinary people did not dare to go against them. Not long after, Yi Feng carried the bronze coffin to the front of the main hall. Glancing at the elders and the old man, Yi Feng slammed the bronze coffin on the ground. Boom! In an instant, the entire Heaven Mountain range began to tremble. It was on the verge of collapsing. Hiss, what a powerful force. Heavens, to what extent has his divine force, divine glyph, been cultivated too? He can make the entire mountain range shake with just one hit? The onlookers' expressions changed drastically. They all flew up and floated in the air, not daring to stay on the mountain range. What kind of joke was this? If the mountain range was implicated by the fight and collapsed, wouldn't it implicate them? Yi Feng raised his head, and a divine light suddenly appeared in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "Old bastard, your time of death has come." Ha ha ha. Amidst the loud laughter, the old man slowly stood up and looked at Yi Feng with divine light in his eyes. Buzz. 7 types of divine runes appeared and intertwined around the old man. The light reflected off each other, making him look like a god. And as the 7 types of divine inscriptions appeared, the countenance of that old man actually turned younger. His back was no longer hunched, and he stood up straight as he coldly stared at Yifeng. Yifeng, if you had continued to flee outside, we would not have been able to do anything to you. However, you have taken the initiative to come here today. You are courting death. The old man, no, the middle-aged man, suddenly revealed a sinister smile. Feng Tianyi has already committed suicide. As for the wedding with the Flying Feather sect, it was just a plan to lure you here. What? Tianyi is dead? Hearing this, Yifeng's body trembled. Soon after, fury surged in his eyes. He angrily stared at one of the elders and roared, "Bastard! You are her father. Why did you let her die?" Oomph. The elder also glared at Yifeng. "I don't have a daughter like her who betrays others. Yifeng, you've gone against our Elysium time and time again. Today, you must pay the price." Ha ha, what a joke. How hateful. Hearing this, Yifeng laughed heartily. 2 streams of tears rolled down his cheeks. "To think that I thought that you, as Tianyi's father, could protect her. That was why she was sent back. I didn't expect you to be worse than an animal. Even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs. You can even do this to your own daughter." The elder's mouth twitched, but he did not reply. All right, after saying so much, it's time to take action. The middle-aged man waved his right hand. In an instant, several divine inscriptions appeared in the air. The power within them dissipated and enveloped the entire Elysium. God's prison array. Set up the array. As soon as he finished speaking, many elders took action. Each of them summoned a divine inscription and floated into the air. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, a total of 30 divine inscriptions rippled and sealed the space. Outside Sky Mountain, the onlookers could not help but panic. They suddenly realized that the layer of space seal was rather thick. They could not see clearly and could only vaguely see the figures inside. Rumble, rumble. In the next moment, the entire mountain range shook violently again, causing everyone to be extremely anxious. It was obvious that the battle had begun, but they could not see the real battle scene. This made them very worried. Buzz. Suddenly, someone noticed that there seemed to be a strange sound at the foot of the mountain. When they lowered their heads to take a look, the crowd was stunned. They saw countless figures squeezed together. Although there were many of them, they were very obedient. They were not noisy and were looking at something seriously. For a moment, the crowd in the air could not help but be puzzled. Aren't these guys here to watch the battle between Yifeng and the Elysium? Why are they so engrossed at the foot of the mountain? And there are so many people gathered? The people in the air frowned slightly, their hearts filled with doubts. Why don't we go down and take a look? Someone suggested. Everyone turned around and saw that the Elysium had been completely enveloped by the array. They could not see the situation inside at all. They immediately let out a long sigh of relief and disappointment. It seems that the Elysium does not want us to see their battle with Yifeng. Hee. I reckon Yifeng can cause them great damage. Not necessarily. Perhaps they want to keep Yifeng here forever. After all, his talent is too strong. Legend has it that 10 years ago, he was still an ant who had just stepped into cultivation. In less than 10 years, he has grown into a powerhouse at the peak of the true God realm. Even the Elysium sect leader may not be his opponent. That's true. His talent is too terrifying. If it were me, I would not let him go so easily. Forget it. Since we can't see it here, let's go down and see what they are doing. Could it be that they found a new relic? With a sigh, the onlookers in the air saw that they could no longer continue to watch and rush down. However, when they landed, they were stunned after a glance from the corner of their eyes. Their mouths were slightly open. Everyone was shocked. In front of them was a huge light screen that was completely condensed from divine sense. On the light screen was the scene of Yifeng holding the bronze coffin and fighting with the many elders of the Elysium. How is this possible? That is the Elysium's array. Even if we use the divine inscriptions, we can't see it clearly. Why would the battle scene appear here? Gulp. The sound of swallowing saliva rose and fell one after another. Everyone forcefully suppressed the shock in their hearts and focused on the scene on the light screen. Of course, there were also people who looked through the light screen into the distance. They saw 3 people wearing bamboo hats sitting on a bamboo raft. They were very calm. Who were they? Could it be that they were the ones who created the light screen? To be able to reflect the battle scene through the Elysium's array. Doesn't their strength surpass Yi Feng and the Elysium sect leader? For a moment, everyone was scared witless and sucked in a breath of cold air. End of this chapter. Chapter 709. Sir, are we just going to let them watch? On the raft, Fan Shiji looked around and couldn't help but ask. At this time, the rest of the people couldn't see the battle within the gate of heaven. They surrounded them and focused on the scene on the screen. Why don't you let them watch? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly and said indifferently, as long as they don't disturb me, everything will be fine. All right, if the 2 of you don't want to watch, you can continue to comprehend the power of the divine runes. This area is suppressed by the gate of heaven. The destiny here is quite strong. If you cultivate here, you will be able to improve your strength. This, after hesitating for a moment, Su Fuwu and Fan Shiji shook their heads and didn't cultivate. Instead, they carefully watched the light screen. On the light screen, Yi Feng's long hair danced wildly. He was like a demon god, waving the bronze coffin and constantly colliding with the divine runes. Dozens of elders stood on the array and released the divine runes in their bodies. The violent power was like a mountain, trying to suppress Yi Feng. However, the bronze coffin was too terrifying. No matter what kind of attack it was, as long as it touched the bronze coffin, it would be absorbed. On the contrary, many of the elders who touched the bronze coffin, even if they had the protection of the divine runes on their bodies, would be sent flying. They would be severely injured and spit out blood. Some of the weaker elders were directly hit by the bronze coffin and lost their ability to fight. This was a terrifying power that was shocking. For a moment, everyone who came to watch the battle sat on the ground or floated in the air. They stared intently at the light screen and carefully watched the battle. Most of them were in the God realm. There were only a few in the true God realm. However, no one was an exception. Many true God realm experts attacked together. This kind of battle was a precious experience for them. Of course, they were still very curious. They were curious about the identity, power, and strength of Lin Yi and the other 2. They were actually able to broadcast the battle scene covered by the array. However, as the battle became more and more exciting, everyone's attention was completely placed on Yi Feng's group. They were no longer curious. In the screen of light, Yi Feng's body was covered in resplendent divine inscriptions. He waved the bronze coffin in one hand, absorbing all the attacks that he had no confidence in blocking. His other hand transformed into a long spear that was condensed from ice-blue divine inscriptions. The spear emitted a cold light, and a biting cold chi rippled out. With a bronze coffin in one hand and a long spear in the other, many of the elders were completely suppressed. They were not Yi Feng's match at all. As if he wanted to avenge the young girl named Feng Tianyi, Yi Feng's eyes were bloodshot as he stared fixedly at Elder Feng. Every single one of his most ferocious attacks were directed towards him. In less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, many of the elders were already out of breath and were no longer able to resist Yi Feng. As for Elder Feng, his entire body was covered with injuries. If it was not for his strength, the blood in his body would have been frozen by the power of ice contained within. Enough! Activate the formation. With a loud shout, the formation in the sky began to rotate, and many divine inscriptions began to appear. All kinds of attacks were launched towards Yi Feng. Feeling this, Yi Feng sneered. He threw the bronze coffin into the air, and with a curl, he came under the bronze coffin and held it with both hands. Buzz, buzz, buzz. All kinds of attacks landed on the bronze coffin, and instantly, they disappeared without a trace. On the other hand, Yi Feng had used up some energy, and his face was slightly red, but he was not injured at all. It was obvious that Yi Feng's strength was much stronger than those elders. The elders had been defeated, and the sect leader had personally taken action. In an instant, the divine inscriptions surged. Lightning, flames, wind, light, devouring, and many other powers appeared at the same time, surrounding Yifeng. Ha ha! Old bastard, if it wasn't for you, my sect wouldn't have been destroyed. Today, I will make you pay with your blood. Amidst his angry roar, Yifeng exploded. The divine inscriptions in his body bloomed, and instantly, 7 divine inscriptions floated in the air. Ice, divine power, curse, devour, seal, space, and defense. The divine inscriptions surged, and a special power enveloped Yifeng's body. At the same time, his strength became stronger. He lifted the bronze coffin with one hand, and with a leap, he jumped several feet high. Then, he spun the bronze coffin with one hand and smashed it towards the sect leader. At the same time, the curse, devour, seal, and space powers exploded together, completely sealing the space around the sect leader. The strange power of the curse and devour fell on the sect leader, cutting off his connection with the divine inscriptions in his body. The chi of ice permeated the entire heavenly gate, causing everyone's movements to become sluggish. This time, Yifeng attacked with all his strength. Even he himself could not avoid it, and his movements were sluggish as well. This guy, he actually comprehended 5 different divine inscriptions. Although the cursed divine inscriptions can reduce the strength of others, and the effect is extremely powerful, its speed is very slow, and it is very difficult to hit. He comprehended the ice, seal, and space divine inscriptions at the same time, and can completely slow down or even lock down the movement of others. This way, the cursed divine inscriptions will almost certainly hit. Together with the divine power and defense divine inscriptions, isn't this too shameless? This kind of combination of divine inscriptions has always only existed in legends. After all, comprehending divine inscriptions is something that can only be found by chance. How many people can't comprehend divine inscriptions after successfully comprehending a few divine inscriptions? Why does he dare to do this? Could it be that he is not afraid that he will suddenly be unable to comprehend divine inscriptions? If there is no such combination of divine inscriptions, these divine inscriptions are just trash. The crowd was shocked, and when they looked at Yifeng again, their eyes were filled with admiration. Ordinary people would fuse whatever divine inscriptions they comprehended. After all, divine inscriptions were something that could only be found by chance. If they could not comprehend it in the future, wouldn't they be doomed? Moreover, the mutual promotion and suppression of divine inscriptions were not very obvious. In the eyes of most people, as long as they were strong enough, no matter what divine inscriptions they used, they would be able to unleash powerful effects. However, this time, they saw the power of the combination of divine inscriptions. Yifeng's true strength was not even comparable to the sect leader of the Elysium, but under the power of the combination of divine inscriptions, the sect leader could not dodge at all, and could only forcibly take on Yifeng's cursed divine inscriptions. Hua! Pooh! The moment the cursed divine inscriptions landed on the sect leader's body, his hair turned white, and the skin on his face began to age, and was full of wrinkles. The strength in his body, the power of his blood, was also rapidly weakening. No! Even if it is the cursed divine inscriptions, it cannot take away my strength. The shrill scream resounded through the sky. Even with the barrier of the array, it still reverberated clearly in the ears of the crowd. End of chapter. Chapter 710. How powerful! The combination of divine runes is terrifying. The onlookers were shocked. However, they soon discovered that as the sect master screamed miserably, the speed at which he was aging had actually stopped. Bang! The divine runes of light around the sect leader's body shone brightly, blocking the power of the divine runes of curse. However, the power that he had lost could not be regained. Roar! Yifeng, I want you dead. The sect leader's eyes were bloodshot. The divine rune of devouring appeared in his body and turned into a giant mouth, resisting Yi Feng's divine rune of devouring. As a result, Yi Feng's multiple divine runes began to split. The power that he could unleash could no longer restrain the sect leader. Lightning, raging flames, gale, turn into my body. The sect leader clasped his hands together. In the next moment, the divine runes of lightning, raging flames, and gale wrapped around the sect leader's body, forming a suit of armor. This is the divine rune armor. I heard that the divine rune armor is a power that only heavenly gods can use. Is the sect leader of the Elysium that powerful? No, look, the armor that he has transformed into only protects his chest, hands, and head. There's still many places that he can't transform into armor. Phew, it seems like the sect leader of the Elysium has one foot in the door of the heavenly god realm. The crowd was shocked when they realized this. They did not expect there to be a half-step heavenly god realm elite in Jiuzhou. Roar! After transforming into armor, the sect leader's eyes were bloodshot. He let out a long roar and charged towards Yifeng. Yifeng swung the bronze coffin with one hand and smashed it towards the sect leader. Bang! Clang! However, this time, the bronze coffin did not succeed. The sect leader's armor and the bronze coffin collided, but it was not taken away. Instead, there was a clear sound of collision. Clang! 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 In the next moment, the sect leader attacked Yifeng relentlessly as if he had gone mad. His hands, feet, and every inch of skin on his body had turned into the sharpest weapon, continuously slamming into the bronze coffin. As the bronze coffin continued to emit the sound of metal colliding, Yifeng's expression finally changed. Although the material of the bronze coffin was very strong, there was no need to fear damage. However, with every collision, the surging power passed through the bronze coffin and into his arm. After so many collisions, even with the support of the divine power divine rune, he still felt pain. In just a short moment, Yifeng's expression had turned ugly, and his arm had turned red. Of course, the spectators didn't notice this point. They only saw Yifeng clashing with the sect leader unceasingly. Every time they fought, they were incomparably excited. They wanted nothing more than to rush up and experience it for themselves. Phew, if this little fellow called Yifeng still doesn't use his trump card, he's going to lose. Lin Yi lightly shook his head as he asked in a low voice, "A battle between divine inscriptions is like this." No, they haven't fused the divine inscriptions and unleashed their strongest attack, Fan Shiji said in a low voice. When the amount of divine runes in our bodies reaches the limit, we will fuse the power of the divine runes together again, turning them into a type of energy. That was a strike that contained all of his strength. Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel helpless. What was wrong with the cultivation system of this world? Comprehending the divine inscriptions was one thing, but after comprehending too many divine inscriptions, one actually had to fuse multiple divine inscriptions into one. Why not just comprehend one divine inscription? Why was it so troublesome? Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi decided to continue watching. He didn't care who won this battle. He only cared about whether or not he would be able to obtain news from the 9 heavens after this battle ended. Bang, bang, bang. After a few more collisions, Yifeng finally couldn't take it anymore and took a few steps back. He suddenly put down the bronze coffin, causing the entire mountain range to shake violently. Even the sect leader was shaken by the powerful force. Rubbing his nose, the sect leader looked at Yifeng, whose hands were red, and sneered, "Little fellow, so you're just relying on the bronze coffin. Now, let's see what other tricks you have. The rest of you, set up the array. You must trap this guy for me." Yes. As the sect leader's voice fell, dozens of elders leaped up and strengthened the array. The material of the bronze coffin was too strong. Even if it was just a collision, they would lose their fighting strength and could only strengthen the array. They glared at Yifeng. The corner of Yifeng's mouth curled up, but he didn't show any fear. On the contrary, he was very relaxed. He looked around and smiled at the sect leader. If I only had this preparation, why would I dare to come to the Heaven's Gate headquarters? Watch me devour heaven and earth. As his voice fell, Yifeng waved his hands, and opened his mouth slightly. In the next moment, a crazy pulling force exploded from his mouth. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Countless spiritual chi and divine inscriptions were pulled into Yi Feng's body. Gulp, gulp. The sound of Yi Feng's throat rolling could be heard. As Yi Feng swallowed, the power in his body was increasing rapidly. In just a few breaths, the power of the divine inscriptions had filled every inch of Yi Feng's skin. There was also a special kind of power that supported Yi Feng's body. Outside the light screen, Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised when he saw this scene. Soon after, the corner of his mouth curled up, and he looked at Yi Feng curiously. He wanted to see just how strong Yi Feng had become after absorbing so much divine inscriptions and even having the support of soul strength. At the same time, he wanted to see how Yi Feng was able to combine the spiritual chi and the divine inscriptions together. Although the divine inscriptions that Lin Yi comprehended were directly integrated into his divine inscriptions, every time he attacked, he didn't feel much change in his divine inscriptions. Divine inscriptions were still divine inscriptions. After all, Lin Yi had only been in this world for a short time, and there were many things that he couldn't verify. Now that there was someone who knew about it, he was naturally curious. Bang, bang, bang. However, what disappointed Lin Yi was that Yi Feng, who had received the support of the spiritual chi, didn't use it. He continued to use the divine inscriptions and continued to fight head-on with the sect leader. The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. He felt helpless. Why didn't he use the spiritual chi when he had it? However, even if Yi Feng didn't deliberately use the spiritual chi, the divine inscriptions that were supported by the spiritual chi still exploded with a powerful force and forced the sect leader to retreat. The sect leader's armor even showed signs of cracking. This scene caused the onlookers to be dumbstruck and dumbstruck. End of chapter. Chapter 711. No, cough, cough. The sect leader looked at the armor on his body that was about to collapse and went crazy. He could not believe that Yi Feng, who had not even touched the threshold of the heavenly god realm, could use the power of the divine rune to destroy his divine rune armor. Old fart, you killed my family 10 years ago and destroyed my sect 3 years ago. Where's your arrogance? Yi Feng's eyes widened in anger. He raised his hands, and the ice-blue divine rune turned into an ice spear in his hands. Today, I want you to die. As his voice fell, Yi Feng's body twisted, and the ice-blue long spear in his hand shot out like an arrow towards the sect master. Whoosh! The wind was biting cold, mixed with a sharp killing intent, causing the sect leader's body to tremble. Oh no, sect leader! Sect leader! Seeing this scene, many of the elders could not help but cry out in alarm. However, at this moment, they were using all of their strength to support the formation. There was simply no way for them to save the sect leader. They could only widen their eyes and watch helplessly as the icy blue long spear approached the sect leader. The sect leader was even more frightened. His body began to tremble, but he could not muster any strength to get up, let alone dodge. In his eyes, the ice spear was getting closer and closer. The sect leader's face was filled with fear. Ha ha, go to hell. Yi Feng looked up to the sky and roared. Tears rolled down his cheeks again. After so many years, so many people's hatred was finally going to be avenged. The onlookers were completely silent. Their faces were filled with shock. Previously, they were not surprised when Yi Feng was in danger. However, they were stunned now. They could not believe that the sect leader of the Sky Gate, who had dominated the Azure Cloud state for many years, was going to die in the hands of a young man. Buzz! Clang! However, just as the ice-blue spear was about to pierce through the sect leader's head, a purple-black flame appeared out of nowhere and melted the ice-blue spear. What's going on? Noticing this, Yi Feng's laughter came to an abrupt halt. His expression was grave as he stared fixedly at the ball of flame. The onlookers were also shocked and stared curiously at the flame. Could it be that the sect leader of the Sky Gate still had a backup plan? Interesting. Looks like they've called for reinforcements. The corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up slightly as he let out a low sigh. Fan Shiji and Sufu were both confused. Buzz. Beep. 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 Amidst the strange sound waves, the purple-black flames suddenly turned into a black smoke and gradually condensed into a figure. Ancestor, you've come out of seclusion? The sect leader's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and saluted the figure. His patriarch? Oh my God, the Elysium patriarch is still alive. It said that he was already at the peak of the true God realm several hundred years ago. Now, he's probably already stepped into the celestial God realm long ago, right? Hearing the sect leader's words, the onlookers were stunned and shocked. They all made up their minds to never go against the Elysium again. The heavenly God realm was a strength that surpassed the entire 9 prefectures. All the heavenly God realm experts had gone to the 9 heavens. A peak true God realm expert could suppress a divine land, let alone a heavenly God realm expert. Not only them, but the other elders were also extremely excited, and they all bowed respectfully. Ha, this kid is dead for sure. The ancestor has appeared. What do we have to worry about? This kid actually dares to break into the Elysium. He's simply courting death. Shut up. However, the old ancestor shouted. His eyes were filled with a piercingly cold intent as he looked at the elders. Feeling the piercing, killing intent, the elders did not dare to speak anymore and silently supported the array. Oomph. With a cold snort, the elder swung his sleeve. Dark clouds surged on his face as he said eerily, "What a bunch of trash. I've only been in seclusion for a few years, and someone actually dares to break into the Elysium? Kong Ruatian, as the sect leader, you're really competent." Hearing this, Kong Ruatian, who was the sect leader, could not help but smile bitterly. He also did not expect Yifeng to have such strength. Wait until I've settled the matter outside. Then I'll teach you all a lesson. The elder glanced at Yifeng, but his brows furrowed slightly. He actually had an abnormal feeling in his heart. He then raised his head to look at his surroundings. The elder's expression gradually became serious. When he came out earlier, he did not feel much. He only became furious when he saw a person single-handedly turning the Elysium into such a state. But now, he realized that Yifeng was not simple. Moreover, he was inside the Elysium and was protected by the array, but he still felt like someone was spying on him. It had to be said that a heavenly god powerhouse was especially sensitive to power. Even if Lin Yi used the power of divine sense to change the scene of the battle, even if the ancestor had not seen the power of divine sense before, he still felt that something was wrong. Of course, Lin Ye's strength was stronger than his, so he could not sense Lin Ye's existence. Phew, your strength is not bad, but it's really a fantasy to think that you can destroy the Elysium with just this. With a faint sigh, purplish-black divine runes appeared all over the elder's body. Like a mist, they enveloped him. In an instant, all the aura was isolated. Yifeng only felt an endless evil aura surging towards him. Frowning slightly, Yifeng did not hesitate at all. He immediately turned around and pushed the bronze coffin with both hands. Bang! The lid of the bronze coffin flew out. In the next moment, a corpse jumped out from inside. Yifeng also went up, his hands forming seals. In the next moment, a surging soul power actually bloomed from his body, rippling out and colliding with the corpse. Buzz! As the corpse and Yifeng's body collided, a bright light bloomed. In the next moment, a figure landed on the ground and stood on the ground, looking at the black shadow in a daze. In his eyes, an icy blue light gradually flickered. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned, including many true god powerhouses. They all stared with their eyes and mouths wide open. Oh, this is a reincarnation in a corpse? And it's a corpse puppet that you refined? The ancestor sneered out loud. No wonder you dare to come to the Elysium to be presumptuous. You actually know this method. Phew, the power contained in this corpse is indeed powerful. Even a true god who just entered the true god realm may not be able to deal with it. No wonder you dare to challenge the Elysium alone. But It's a pity that you met me. Dealing with corpses like these is my specialty. Since you want to play with evil, then I'll use this kind of power to play with you to death." As he spoke, the ancestor walked slowly towards the corpse. Frowning slightly, the corpse immediately jumped up and swept its hands, slapping towards the ancestor. Buzz! A strange black aura emerged. The corpse's claws were like sharp blades, shining with a strange cold light. End of chapter. Chapter 712. Hee, you're not giving up. With a sinister laugh, the patriarch pushed his hands forward. In an instant, endless purplish-black smoke gushed out from his body. In just a few breaths, the purplish-black smoke had swallowed up the corpse. This purplish-black smoke. What a familiar feeling. On the bamboo raft, Lin Yi narrowed his eyes as a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Dense cold air quietly gathered around him. Bang! With a violent sound, the corpse flew out of the purplish-black smoke like a cannonball and hit the wall hard. The stone wall collapsed. After the corpse fell to the ground, it twitched violently and gradually turned into two bodies. One of them was Yi Feng's body. He. The patriarch laughed coldly. You're just borrowing the divine body. Not to mention that he's dead. Even if he were alive, he still wouldn't be my match. Cough, cough. Hearing this, Yi Feng could not help but cough violently. He curled up his body and kept retreating. At this time, Yi Feng could not help but regret. If he had known, he would have listened to his master and broken through to the heavenly god realm before coming to cause trouble for the heavenly gate. He did not expect that there would be such an old monster in the heavenly gate. In this case, unless his master intervened, he would not be able to escape. At this point, Yi Feng's heart was filled with bitterness. At the same time, Yi Feng's soul power bloomed around his body to protect him. Soon, the patriarch realized that something was wrong. He looked at Yi Feng and immediately sneered. I was wondering why you dare to cause trouble in the heavenly gate with such a cultivation level. So you have a helper. However, with me here today, no matter how strong your helper is, you won't be able to leave here. As soon as he finished speaking, the patriarch's body suddenly trembled. Suddenly, two balls of purplish-black smoke appeared on his hands. Extremely terrifying and frightening auras rippled out from within the mist. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As soon as the smoke appeared, it imprisoned Yi Feng's entire body. Even the soul power on the surface of his body dissipated by a lot. No, what is this? At this time, Yi Feng felt the soul power in his body dissipating. His entire body was terrified, and his face was filled with shock. He didn't want to die here before getting his revenge. He. Of course, this is my power. The patriarch laughed coldly. In the Azure Cloud continent, no one can save the person I want to kill in front of me. Die. As soon as he finished speaking, the patriarch raised his right hand. Dark purple smoke turned into a sharp spear and pierced toward Yi. No. A heart-wrenching voice rang out. Yi Feng could sense that his sea of consciousness had completely lost connection with his master. He immediately fell into despair, not even bothering to resist. Patriarch. Seeing this scene, many elders laughed out loud. The heavenly gates is mighty. Those who insult the heavenly gate will be killed. The onlookers, the heavenly gate, they never thought that in the Azure Cloud continent, there would be a heavenly god realm powerhouse. Sect Leader Kong was already the #1 person in the Azure Cloud continent in name. In addition to the Patriarch's existence, the heavenly gate's power would be completely consolidated. From now on, no one would dare to disobey the heavenly gate's orders. Buzz! The strange sharp spear slowly approached Yi Feng, like a devil approaching its prey. However, just as the sharp spear was about to pierce Yi Feng's body and Yi Feng closed his eyes in despair, a weak voice quietly rang in everyone's ears. No one has ever been able to kill him while I was trying to save someone. Although the voice was soft, the power within was incomparably powerful. It was like a clap of thunder, reverberating in everyone's hearts and shaking their minds. A figure, as if out of thin air, quietly appeared in front of Yifeng. With a light wave of his right hand, the sharp black spear in front of him instantly melted like snow under the scorching sun. Wait a minute. This figure seems to be the person who projected the image. When the onlookers saw that figure, they were greatly shocked in their hearts. They hurriedly turned their heads to look at the bamboo raft, but saw that the original three-person fishing team was only left with 2 people. Hiss! It's really him. My God, I should have thought of it long ago. He was able to transmit all the scenes so clearly under the obstruction of the Heavenly Gate array formation. Even that Heavenly God Realm Patriarch was unable to discover his existence. His strength absolutely far surpasses the so-called Patriarch. Gulp. I didn't expect that the true expert was actually hiding beside us all along. I wonder what grudge this powerhouse has with the Heavenly Gate to actually deal with the Heavenly Gate. Could it be that he's that brat's master? It's also not impossible. Otherwise, why would he make a move? Everyone murmured, already imagining Lin Yi as a reclusive expert coming to avenge his disciple. This way, Yifeng's rapid increase in strength could also be explained. With this kind of realm powerhouse as a teacher, this kind of speed of improvement was not considered too fast. However, just as everyone was discussing in surprise, the light screen in front of them collapsed with a loud bang. Hiss! What's going on? Not letting us watch anymore. I'm afraid that powerhouse wants to make a move himself and doesn't want us to watch. Everyone sighed, but there was nothing they could do. However, they did not leave, but continued to wait here. They very much wanted to know how the outcome would be. If Lin Yi won, they did not mind going forward to get close to him. In their view, Lin Yi was so easygoing previously. Perhaps he was very easy to talk to. If they could build a relationship with a powerhouse of this level, perhaps their fate would change. At the peak of Heavenly Mountain, in the Heavenly Gate, Lin Yi's expression was indifferent. The power of divine thought turned into a milky white light, enveloping Yifeng. In an instant, the remnant demonic qi in Yifeng's body all evaporated, turning into green smoke. Yifeng only felt his body was refreshed. Pleasantly surprised, he hurriedly got up and thanked Lin Yi. Not far away, the great ancestor frowned and stared at Lin Yi. He could feel that there was a terrifying power in Lin Yi's body that made him feel a lingering fear. Therefore, he did not directly make a move. Instead, he kept sizing up Lin Yi. If the great ancestor did not dare to make a move, his subordinates did not dare to say anything. They only quietly looked at Lin Yi. Not long after, the great ancestor suddenly smiled. Brother, how should I address you? Where are you from? What brings you to the Heavenly Gate today? If you have something to say, just say it. I, He Changsheng, will definitely not refuse. In a chapter. Chapter 713. The moment He Changsheng's words fell, everyone was stunned as the corners of their mouths twitched, especially Yifeng. Previously, He Changsheng was so domineering that he defeated him the moment they met and even threatened to kill him. However, Lin Yi's arrival caused He Changsheng's aura to change rapidly. You have no right to know my identity. Lin Yi glanced at He Changsheng and said indifferently, What you cultivate is demonic energy. Where did this guy come from? How dare he be so arrogant? As soon as his voice fell, the expressions of the Elysium elders changed drastically. They all roared out angrily and glared at Lin Yi. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't move, they would have rushed up a long time ago. The Elysium was the #1 force in the Azure Cloud continent. Yet, they were being looked down upon by someone who didn't even reveal his identity. Naturally, they were furious. Lin Yi sneered. He glanced at everyone and scanned them with his spiritual sense. In an instant, everyone felt a chill run down their spines, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. At this moment, they finally felt how terrifying Lin Yi was. Immediately, their hearts turned cold, and they didn't dare to speak anymore. Shut up, He Changsheng roared out. What did I teach you? As the #1 orthodoxy in the Azure Cloud continent, we must treat people with courtesy. What are you doing? Hearing this, everyone's mouths twitched crazily. Especially Yifeng. He almost spat out softly. What the F***CK? This was a blatant lie. The Elysium had always been arrogant and despotic. Why had they ever treated people with courtesy? However, he knew that it was because Lin Yi saved him that he was spared. Lin Yi didn't speak, so he naturally wouldn't say anything. Moreover, his own strength was not as good as He Qingxing's. He knew that he couldn't court death. Huff! Lin Yi didn't care about He Qingxing's words. He only asked indifferently, I'll ask you one last time. Is the technique you cultivate a demonic technique? Was that demonic energy just now? Demonic energy? What devil chi? He Qingsheng looked confused as he said, I don't know. What I cultivate is the orthodox Xian technique, and what I have comprehended are all elemental divine runes. As he spoke, He Qingxing's thoughts moved slightly. Several thunder and blaze elemental divine patterns appeared around him, reflecting off each other and illuminating him like a god. With a slight frown, Lin Ye's figure flashed and arrived in front of He Qingsheng. The power of divine sense immediately covered Lin Ye's right hand. At the same time, the divine rune of sealing, divine rune of space, divine rune of frigid qi, divine rune of slowness, and nearly 100 other runes that could slow down speed or seal space erupted and locked He Qingsheng in place. Puqi. Under the influence of close to 100 types of space-disrupting divine imprints, He Qingsheng had no power to resist and was directly sealed. In the next moment, Lin Ye's right hand had already pierced through He Qingxing's heart, and he suddenly clenched his fist. Puji! Amidst the crisp sound, He Qingxing's heart shattered. Lin Ye's figure retreated. In his right hand, he was still holding a broken heart. Buzz! The divine patterns dissipated, and the space returned to normal. He Qingsheng immediately let out a shrill cry. That sound passed through the array and resounded in the sky. The shrill cry caused the people waiting outside to feel chills all over their bodies. They could not help but tremble with fear. The many elders, Yifeng, and the rest were stunned. Previously, He Qingxing's strength had already frightened them, and they almost did not have any power to resist. But now, He Qingxing's heart had been pierced through in an instant, and it made them extremely shocked. When they turned around and saw the broken heart in Lin Ye's hand, they kept swallowing their saliva, and they could not even say a word. However, they had neglected He Qingsheng. Normally, if the heart was broken, even a god would die, unless he had two hearts. But ordinary people only had one heart. Either the heart was on the other side, or it was in another race. Cough, cough. After a few violent coughs, the divine patterns that appear beside, He Qingsheng immediately emitted purplish black smoke, completely devouring the holy aura from before. Bastard! How did you find out? You were not in the array before. How did you find out that I cultivated the demonic arts? He Qingsheng glared at Lin Yi, his eyes flashing with murderous intent. But more than that, there was fear. At that moment, he did not even know how Lin Yi had done it, and his heart had already shattered. If it wasn't for the fact that this was his headquarters, he would have fled long ago. Phew, you are indeed a demon. Lin Yi took a deep breath, and his eyes were also filled with murderous intent as he looked at He Qingsheng. In the divine continent, although demons had been exterminated, Lin Yi was extremely afraid of demons. Even in this magical world, he was not willing to let demons exist. If this was a real world, and it was connected to the divine continent, would the demons in this world go to the divine continent after they grew stronger? Lin Yi understood that since they could come to this world must have a way to go to the divine continent. Even if they did not know it now, they would definitely find it in the future. Therefore, when Lin Yi saw the demons, he was filled with murderous intent. He must exterminate all demons. Kakik. Interesting. He Qingxing's shoulders shook, and a strong black smoke appeared, turning into two terrifying heads. They were extremely ferocious and had sharp fangs. Ah! Seeing this, Yifeng could not help but exclaim. Some elders were also shocked and looked at He Changsheng in a daze. This is a two-headed demon. Yifeng trembled all over and roared. The two-headed demon has the cultivation of a peak quasi-emperor. Kakik. The three heads grinned at the same time and said in a sinister voice, "After so many years, you are the first person to know about us demons. It seems that your identity is not simple either. And you, kid, the existence in your head probably doesn't belong to this world, right? No wonder I felt that your fighting style just now was not majoring in divine inscriptions." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but grin. Although he did not find anyone from the divine continent on this trip to the heavenly gate, he still gained a lot. Whether it was the existence of the demons or the strangeness of the young man, this trip was not in vain. "Although I don't know how many demons are behind you," Lin Yi said indifferently, "but all demons that appear in front of me must die." With that, Lin Yi glanced at sect leader Kong and some elders. He could sense that some of the elders had a demonic aura, and when they saw the two-headed demon, their expressions did not change. It was obvious that these people had come into contact with the demons and had fallen into the embrace of the demons. At this thought, the murderous intent in Lin Ye's heart grew stronger. End of chapter. Chapter 714. Demons deserve to be killed, and humans who surrendered to the demons deserve to be killed even more. In fact, the demons were not very powerful at the beginning, and they were all hidden in the dark. However, many humans had surrendered to the demons, and that was why they became stronger. "Ha ha ha, look at you. You seem to want to kill me?" The two-headed demon, He Changsheng, said ferociously, "I tolerated you just now because I didn't want to expose myself. Now that I've been exposed, I can only kill you. I'm not an ant who just entered the heaven god realm." As soon as He Changsheng finished speaking, 9 divine inscriptions appeared at the same time and merged together. They shone with a purplish-black light, and a thunderbolt quietly rippled out from the purplish-black light. Heavenly Demon Wild Thunder. He Changsheng looked ferocious. In an instant, the purplish-black thunderbolt was like a giant dragon, roaring and attacking Lin Yi. "If you use the demonic chi, I'll find it a little tricky. If you use the divine inscriptions," Lin Yi shook his head and sighed. With a thought, thousands of divine inscriptions appeared, and endless power rippled out, turning into a light screen that protected Lin Yi. Rumble! The thunderbolt bombarded the light screen, but there was no effect. The light screen did not even shake. How is this possible? In an instant, everyone in the Elysium was stunned. They were not surprised that Lin Yi was not injured at all, but the thousands of divine inscriptions that appeared in the air. No, how can there be so many divine inscriptions? There's the power of the rules of heaven and earth. No matter how strong a person's physique is, even the divine god Juwu back then, he only merged 9 different divine inscriptions. How can someone comprehend so many divine inscriptions? This guy is not human. Thousands of divine inscriptions. Is he a demon? Illusion. This must be an illusion. When everyone saw this, they were completely stunned and could not believe their eyes. Even Yifeng was shocked. Even though he had a master who came from another world and had successfully fused the 2 cultivation systems together, he still couldn't break through this shackle. Therefore, he did not dare to believe it. "I can't believe it. Phew, but the eyes don't lie." With a light sigh, Lin Yi casually waved his hands. In an instant, the divine inscriptions that filled the skies were like a sphere that instantly contracted, enveloping He Changsheng. He Changsheng only felt a chill in his heart. Not daring to hesitate, he turned around and ran. However, with his speed, how could he compare to the shrinking power of the divine inscriptions? In just a breath's time, He Changsheng's body trembled. In the next instant, his body was completely enveloped by the divine inscriptions that filled the sky. He Changsheng had no choice but to give up on his body and turn into a wave of demonic chi, wanting to escape. However, would Lin Yi give him such a chance? Almost in an instant, the 3,000 heavenly ways and divine creation were activated at the same time. The divine consciousness that was filled with a holy aura immediately enveloped the wave of demonic chi, entangling it into a ball. In the next moment, the five spirits' divine incantation was activated, and the divine consciousness instantly turned into flames that were mixed with the 3,000 heavenly ways and divine creation. In the tragic roar of He Chung Shung, or more accurately, the two-headed demon, it burned him into ashes. Gulp! The sound of saliva swallowing could be heard continuously. Many of the elders of the Heavenly Gate looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of fear. Next, it's your turn. Lin Yi turned around and looked at the elders and sect leader that contained the demonic chi in their bodies. No, sir, divine creation, I beg you, spare me. I was forced by the sect leader. If I wasn't infected by the demonic chi, he would have killed my entire family. After being swept by Lin Yi's cold gaze, many of the elders could not hold on any longer. One by one, they knelt down and begged Lin Yi for mercy. Phew, if apologies are useful, how are you going to deal with the lives that are carried by the demonic chi in your bodies? His eyes were piercingly cold. Lin Yi did not hold back at all. The divine consciousness of a sage level was like a sharp blade, wreaking havoc and sweeping across. Pucci! The elders that were infected by the demonic chi suddenly stiffened. In the next moment, their bodies began to burn and gradually turned into ashes. They completely disappeared in the air, and even their souls were not left behind. Only a dozen or so elders who had not been tainted by the demonic chi survived. However, their faces were still filled with horror. Originally, they thought that Lin Yi would kill them as well. They did not expect that they would survive. After killing the elders that contained the demonic chi, Lin Yi suddenly realized that he had forgotten to leave one alive. The Jojo continent was divided into 9 states. Since demons had appeared in the ash cloud state, would there be traces of demons in the other states as well? In the ash cloud state, other than the gate of heaven, were there any traces of demons? Lin Yi did not know about these things. Originally, he wanted to leave one alive so that he could slowly interrogate him. However, the speed of his killing earlier was too fast. Unable to hold back for a moment, he actually killed off all of the fiends. Phew! Now it seems that I can only go to the other 8 states to take a look. If there are any demons, I must kill them all. With a soft sigh, Lin Yi did not ask the elders. Instead, he turned his gaze to Yifeng. Little brother, can the senior in your mind come out for a chat? Lin Yi's smile was bright. However, Yifeng hesitated. Although Lin Yi had saved him and helped him a lot, the master in his mind was his last trump card. He cannot expose it so easily. Swoosh! Just as Yifeng was hesitating, a slightly illusory figure appeared beside him. It was an old man. His face was haggard, but his expression was firm, and he looked especially righteous. Even Lin Yi felt a sense of admiration the moment he saw the old man. Master, why did you come out? Yifeng was extremely surprised, and his heart was filled with fear. It's fine. The old man chuckled. This friend is very peaceful. He won't attack you or me. Moreover, he is dedicated to killing demons. He is definitely not a bad person. Senior, may I know which continent you are from? Without the slightest hesitation, Lin Yi asked directly. Oh, the old man looked at Lin Yi in surprise for a moment. He frowned and asked in confusion, what you cultivate is clearly divine runes. How do you know about the existence of other continents? Normally, even if an ordinary person knew that he was very special, they would not think of other continents. Even Yifeng only knew that he was from other continents because he had accidentally said too much. To be able to ask such a question, he definitely did not belong to this continent. In an instant, the old man's eyes lit up. End of chapter. Chapter 7:15. Senior's guess is correct. Lin Yi chuckled. May I know which continent Senior is from? This old man is from the Lingwu continent. The old man said in a deep voice, I, Cheng Shifei, am a celestial emperor. However, There are some bastards who colluded with the foreign races and gathered 7 Emperor-level beasts to besiege me. I killed 5 people in a row in the starry sky. I had no choice but to sever my own soul and wander to this continent. Celestial Emperor. Is it a brand new cultivation system? Lin Ye's eyebrows twitched as he sighed. Originally, he thought that the old man was also from the Divine Continent. After all, the Divine Continent could now be connected to this world. Unexpectedly, Cheng Shifei was from another continent. If the two-headed demons from other continents were added, then this world would be interesting. It could actually be connected to other continents. If that's the case, perhaps that plan is a conspiracy. Thinking of this, Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. He had secretly made up his mind to tell Elder Bai and the others everything that had happened here. Brother, seeing Lin Yi's absent-minded expression, Cheng Shifei could not help but ask, "It seems that you are not from the Lingwu continent." "Sigh, I originally thought that if you were from the Lingwu continent, you would still be able to find your way home." At this point, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei could not help but smile bitterly. Unfortunately, they were not from the same continent. Not far away, many elders heard the conversation between Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei, and they were all confused. What was going on? What did other continents mean? Could it be that Lin Yi and the others were not from this world? Yi Feng was stunned. He could not believe that he would meet 2 people from other worlds in succession. Just as everyone was surprised, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei were discussing the connection between several continents. They were not weak. Through these things, they could confirm many things. First of all, every world, or rather every continent, had a passage that connected to other continents. Under normal circumstances, the passage was closed. Only through abnormal circumstances could one enter and exit, such as Cheng Shifei. Another situation was to open a passage between 2 continents and teleport over. This was how Lin Yi and the others came here. Since this so-called sky market could become a transit point connecting various worlds, it definitely hid a big secret. Once the demons occupied the sky market world, wouldn't they be able to invade other continents and worlds at will? In that case, they would be able to evolve at the fastest speed through plundering and killing. Perhaps when they appeared in the Divine Continent again, even experts at the peak of the Absolute Saint realm would not be their opponents. Therefore, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei immediately agreed to clean up some of the devil race in this world first. After the agreement was made, Lin Yi and Lu Ming began to exchange their understanding of this world's cultivation system. Originally, Cheng Shifei had only comprehended a little and did not cultivate. He felt that he was in a soul state and could not cultivate. However, Lin Yi reminded him. Then, Cheng Shifei tried to cultivate. Almost instantly, Cheng Shifei's soul became much more solid. In the space, countless spiritual energy gathered into divine runes and flew into Cheng Shifei's body, lingering around him. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Fortunately, they had been shocked too many times today and were much more indifferent. Lin Yi confirmed his speculation. As expected, his body was condensed from the power of divine sense, while Cheng Shifei was in the form of a soul. There was no such thing as a physical body. In this case, the so-called restriction of only being able to fuse 9 types of divine inscriptions had no effect on them. In that case, as long as we dare to cultivate and comprehend thousands of divine runes, we can completely suppress the people of this world. This doesn't seem to be a bad thing. In this world, we are almost invincible. Not to mention the natives, we don't even have to worry about the demons. With a flip of our hand, we could destroy them. Maybe this is a good thing. We can pass through here and kill all the demons. If we really find the passage to the Divine Continent, we can even guard it. This will be safer. Thinking of this, Lin Yi could not help but smile as he fantasized in his heart. After a while, Cheng Shifei was still fusing the power of the divine runes. The surging power caused the entire Heavenly Gate to be suppressed. All the Heavenly Gate disciples were suppressed by a powerful force. They could not even stand up. Some of the weaker ones even had difficulty breathing. Feeling this powerful force, Yi Feng was excited. Cheng Shifei was his master. The more powerful he was, the safer he would be. Lin Yi woke up quickly. He walked to the elders and waved his right hand lightly. Instantly, the pressure on their bodies dissipated. Phew! Thank you, sir, for sparing our lives. The elders heaved a sigh of relief. They stood up and bowed to Lin Yi. Let me ask you, do you know how to go to the Nine Heavens? Lin Yi asked directly. The Nine Heavens? That passage is very difficult to open. Hearing this, the remaining elders looked at each other and laughed bitterly. With the current energy, it is very difficult to open the passage to the Nine Heavens. How difficult is it? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and heaved a sigh of relief. Since these elders said that it was difficult to open the passage and not impossible, it seemed that there was a way to go to the Nine Heavens. Now that the energy is scarce, we need the orthodoxies of the 9 continents to open the 9 continents teleportation portal at the same time. Only then can we open a passage to cross the starry sky. Moreover, once the passage to Theta Scarabii is opened, those who have not reached the heavenly god realm will not be able to enter. They will be bounced off by a powerful force. The elders looked at each other and said in a deep voice, Sir, if you want to go to the 9 heavens, we can open the teleportation portal to the Azure Cloud Continent. However, there is no way to open the teleportation portal to the other 8 continents. What are the orthodoxies of the other 8 continents? The orthodoxies of the other 8 continents are Green Jade, Black Flower, Futu, Taoist Palace, Fire Cloud, Frost, Flowing Cloud, and Thousand Flowers. These names are not bad. Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but raise his eyebrows and laugh softly. Ahem, one of the elders coughed softly and said, According to legend, these orthodoxies were created by the peak experts of the past. Until now, although they are still the leaders of their respective continents, their strength is much weaker than before. As far as I know, the orthodoxies of the Hylon continent were defeated by a new force. They have already fled to other continents to call for reinforcements. Lin Yi shrugged. What? That's impossible. End of chapter. Chapter 716. What? That's impossible. As soon as he said that, the elders became agitated and shouted, Impossible! No matter how much time passes, no matter how much our strength weakens, it is impossible for a new force to replace us. Lin Yi did not care about the elders and only stared at them silently. Soon, the elders came to their senses and no longer dared to speak. However, their faces were still filled with disbelief. Realizing this, Lin Yi could not help but shake his head and said, If I wanted to replace all of you, the Heaven's Gate would be gone. Hearing this, many of the elders were shocked. Immediately, a wave of shock rose in their hearts. After a long while, the elders laughed bitterly and said, Could it be that there are many experts in the other states? I don't know about that. Lin Yi yawned and said indifferently, Since you have told me the news of going to the 9 heavens, I will let you go this time and not kill you. Thank you for not killing us, sir. Hearing this, the elders bowed again without any disrespect. All right, hurry up and open the array. With a cold snort, Lin Yi stood up and urged everyone to hurry up. Without the restriction of the pressure, the elders immediately flew off. Soon, only Lin Yi, Yi Feng, and Cheng Shifei were left in the area. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, Cheng Shifei was still fusing the power of the divine inscriptions. He had already fused more than 300 types of divine inscriptions. It was a large number. If others saw it, they would be extremely shocked. However, after a while, when the number of divine inscriptions that he had comprehended reached 500 types, Cheng Shifei's cultivation was interrupted. Phew! With a soft sigh, Cheng Shifei sensed his own strength and said helplessly, My soul is too weak. I can only fuse 500 types of divine inscriptions at most. At this point, Cheng Shifei looked at Lin Yi with envy. With his high standards, he could naturally see the depth of Lin Yi's strength. His, even soul strength, is limited. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. Why was there no restriction on the power of divine sense? Perhaps everything has a limit. It's just that your talent is too strong, so you've broken through the limit. Upon hearing Lin Ye's words, Cheng Shifei carefully surveyed him. After discovering that Lin Ye's bewilderment was genuine, his eyes flickered as he contemplated for a moment. Only then did he speak. Wait till we reach the 9 heavenly layers. There will be even more heavenly deities there. Maybe there will be even more types of divine imprints there. See if you can comprehend them all. That's true. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, our top priority right now is to open the teleportation arrays in the other 8 continents and clean up the demons in the other 8 continents. By the way, your disciple is still quite a distance away from the Heaven God realm. Can you make a breakthrough in a short period of time? After all, only heavenly gods can follow the passageway above the 9 heavens. At this point, Lin Yu was also at a loss. His 2 subordinates seemed to be unable to break through to the Heaven God realm in a short period of time. It was useless even if he gave them the best resources. After all, there was a saying that cultivation had a foundation, and there were also so-called bottlenecks. If one's talent was not high, no matter how many resources they had, they would not be able to break through. In fact, strictly speaking, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei were not considered heavenly gods. However, due to their physiques, they could comprehend hundreds or even thousands of divine imprints. That kind of fusion and superposition power could completely crush the so-called Heaven God realm. Hearing this, Cheng Shifei hesitated. No matter what, he had been with Yi Feng for 10 years. The relationship between master and disciple was deep. Naturally, he was unwilling to part with him. I only need a month's time to break through to the Heaven God realm. Yi Feng suddenly gritted his teeth and said, in order to keep up with master's footsteps, I will do my best. Good, good. Hearing this, Cheng Shifei could not help but be overjoyed. He looked at Yi Feng with a smile. That's good, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. Now, you have only comprehended 7 divine imprints. There are still 2 more that your master will teach you. I won't say anything else. I just want to ask you, how do you plan to deal with Heaven's Gate? Deal with Heaven's Gate? You're asking me? Blinking his eyes, Yi Feng was extremely surprised. That's right, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. After all, you have a grudge with Heaven's Gate. Moreover, I have reached an agreement with your master. This Heaven's Gate, I will leave it to you to deal with. Yi Feng hesitated for a moment, gritting his teeth. Just as he was about to speak, he was stunned. Cheng Shifei also looked at Yi Feng curiously. He wanted to see what kind of temperament Yi Feng had. Of course, they had been master and disciple for many years. Even if Yi Feng made a decision that displeased Cheng Shifei, he would not say much. Forget it, let them go. Yi Feng sighed and said, when those elders return later, I want to ask where Tianyi's body is buried. I want to see her again. Of course. Lin Yi nodded slightly. I have a lover. I must go and see her. Not far away. Cheng Shifei looked at Yi Feng with a satisfied expression. No matter who it was, they would hope that the person beside them would be someone who valued friendship and not a cold-blooded killer. Not long after, the elders returned and hurriedly bowed to Lin Yi. Sir, we have already activated the teleportation portal. As long as the other 8 continents activate the portal, a portal to the universe will appear in the 9 continents. By then, as long as one's strength has reached the heavenly God realm, one will be able to enter the portal. However, it is quite dangerous. Sir, you better be careful. As they spoke, the elders faintly sized up Yi Feng and Cheng Shifei. Their hearts were filled with fear. Although Lin Yi did not attack them, it did not mean that Yi Feng would not kill them. Their strength was not strong. Even Yi Feng could easily kill them. Why? Are you afraid of me? Yi Feng raised an eyebrow and slowly approached them. We dare not. The elders trembled. How dare we be afraid of you, sir? If you dare not, then why are you trembling? Yi Feng was speechless. Then he smiled and said, all right, don't worry. I am not a bloodthirsty person. I will not attack you. Thank you, sir. The elders bowed and thanked him again. It had to be said that if the defeated party wanted to live, they had to live with grievances. Yifeng sighed, and the killing intent in his heart dissipated. In the beginning, it was the sect leader and some elders who had turned into demons that destroyed his sect and killed his family. Now, the sect leader was severely injured by him, and the rest of the elders were beaten to a pulp. Although he was not the one who killed them in the end, he had vented his anger. Moreover, the Elysium's strength had been greatly reduced. The demonized elders were already dead. He did not want to attack the Elysium anymore. In a chapter. Chapter 717. I only have one question, and I hope you can answer it. Yifeng's eyes shone brightly as he stared at the elders. What is it? The elders patted their chests and said, as long as we know the answer, we will definitely answer it. Where is the body of Elder Feng's daughter, Feng Tianyi? At this point, Yifeng could not help but reveal a bitter smile. Ever since his fiancée died, his life had been in darkness. If he had not met Feng Tianyi and Cheng Shifei, he would have died in a daze. He would not have been able to pull himself together. Who would have thought that by the time he managed to pull himself together and gained great strength, Feng Tianyi would have died? Elder Feng's daughter, hearing this, the elder smiled helplessly and said, actually, Feng Tianyi is not dead. Although Elder Feng is a vicious person, he dotes on his daughter very much. What they said earlier was just to provoke you. Yifeng was stunned when he heard what the elders said. Then he exclaimed in surprise, you mean Feng Tianyi is not dead? That's right. The elders grinned and said, sir, Miss Feng is now locked up in the backyard. Let's bring you to her. All right, bring me there quickly. The excited Yifeng hurriedly urged the elders to run to the backyard. Seeing this, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei looked at each other and smiled helplessly. Phew, if the lady is not dead, this little guy will have another motivation. Lin Yi nodded and waved his hand to remove the array in the sky. In an instant, all the onlookers around Sky Mountain flew up to the sky. However, before they could come up, a thunderous voice exploded in their ears. Trespassers will be killed without mercy. As the voice fell, divine runes appeared in the sky and exploded with powerful energy. Hiss! What powerful energy! Fall back, fall back! In a split second, the faces of all the people who had rushed up changed drastically, and they all flew backwards at an even faster speed. The originally densely packed human figures had completely disappeared in less than a dozen breaths of time. Seeing this scene, Su Fuwu and Fan Shiji, who were sitting on the bamboo raft, looked at each other, then raised their heads to look at Sky Mountain. They both got up and ran towards the mountain range. They could tell that it was Lin Ye's voice. After Su Fuwu and Fan Shiji came up, Cheng Shifei glanced at the two of them and could not help but frown slightly. Soon after, he sized up Lin Yi in surprise. With his experience, he could naturally tell that Su Fuwu and Fan Shiji were not very strong. However, Lin Ye's strength was even more powerful than his. He was naturally curious as to why Lin Yi would take in such a weak disciple. From Cheng Shifei's point of view, Lin Yi could have accepted disciples with better talent. My lord, Fan Shiji and Su Fuwu came in front of Lin Yi and bowed slightly. They also glanced at Cheng Shifei in his soul state. After fusing with the power of the 500 divine inscriptions, Cheng Shifei's soul had become much more solid. Apart from being unable to touch, he looked exactly like a real person. Moreover, he had regained his youthful appearance. Therefore, Fan Shiji and Su Fuwu did not notice that something was wrong with Cheng Shifei. They were only surprised that they did not see Cheng Shifei in the previous battle. However, when they saw that Cheng Shifei was so young, similar in age to Lin Yi, they misunderstood and thought that Cheng Shifei and Lin Yi came from the same region. They immediately bowed to Cheng Shifei. In an instant, Cheng Shifei could not help but be dumbfounded. I don't even know you. Why are you bowing to me? Is there any news from the other continents? Lin Yi asked casually. There's only one news. Fan Shiji said in a deep voice. The first orthodoxy of the ocean continent, Frost, has been completely destroyed. Only their sect master escaped and seemed to have come to the Ashcloud continent for help. That's the only news? Linny frowned slightly and asked in a low voice, I still haven't found the others. My lord, there's no news. Fan Shiji's face was filled with shame. Forget it. It's fine if you can't find them. Lin Yi was almost certain that those who came from the divine continent like him should be above the Empyrean. After confirming it again, he did not bother to ask any more questions. As for the people from Frost, he was not worried about them running to him. It was fine as long as the teleportation formation in the ocean continent was still there. Wait a moment, we'll go to another continent. Lin Yi glanced at the two and said indifferently, I'll be going above the Empyrean soon. You'd better break through quickly. If you can't break through to the heavenly god realm by then, even if I want to, you can't follow me. Wait a while. Fan Shiji and Sufu looked at each other when they heard that. Their eyes were filled with nervousness. Although they had an urgent need to break through to the next level, breaking through is not like cabbages. They could not break through just because they wanted to, no matter how urgent it was. They could only cultivate slowly. At the same time, they prayed that Lin Yi could stay in the 9 continents for a while longer. At this moment, Cheng Shifei also realized that the two were not Lin Ye's disciples. They just wanted to follow Lin Yi. He immediately let out a sigh of relief. He knew it. How could someone as powerful as Lin Yi accept such weak people as his disciples? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the sky. Who's there? Fan Shiji and Su Fuwu's ears twitched. They immediately flew up and began to scan the area with their eagle-like eyes. Soon, a figure appeared in their line of sight. Swoosh. However, the speed of that figure was extremely fast. Before they could fly forward to intercept him, that figure had already shot past the two of them and arrived in the large hall. Why is there a smell of gunpowder? The moment the figure landed, he felt that something was wrong. He lifted his head and saw Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei silently staring at him. He instantly felt a chill in his heart. It was as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His entire body was cold, and he did not dare to move. Gulp! After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, the figure asked with difficulty, May I ask, isn't this the gate of heaven? Where are the others? Gate of heaven. Lin Yi rolled his eyes, and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. After carefully sizing up the person, he realized that he was not weak. He was actually at the peak of the true God realm and had also comprehended 7 types of divine inscriptions. After realizing this, Lin Yi confirmed the identity of the person who had come. He could not help but smile and said, I'm sorry, you're a little late. The gate of heaven has just been destroyed. Destroyed? What did you say? The figure's pupils suddenly shrank and his body trembled. He immediately stomped his feet on the ground and wanted to use the rebound force to leave. However, just as he flew out, a figure had already appeared in front of him. End of chapter. Chapter 718. Gulp. You. The man swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he stared at Lin Yi in shock. He didn't dare to believe that Lin Yi was actually able to arrive first and intercept him. Although he was not the strongest in the 9 states, he was confident that no one could stop him if he wanted to run. Even if countless people were chasing after him, he could run all the way from the Billow State to the Ashcloud State. That was right. This person was the sect master of the Han Shuang sect, Tian Shuang. Who are you? Tian Shuang frowned and gritted his teeth. What grudge do you have with the 9 orthodoxies? Why are you attacking us? Lin Yi smiled. I didn't attack you. The gate of heaven was occupied by demons, and I chased them away. I didn't kill anyone who wasn't tainted by the demonic qi. Lin Yi rubbed his nose and looked at Tian Shuang. He could not help but smile. This is really traveling far and wide to find something, only to find it without any effort. I didn't know who destroyed the orthodoxies in the Billow State. And you delivered yourself to me? What did you say? You said the gate of heaven was occupied by demons? Impossible. 2 months ago, I was drinking and chatting with Brother Kong. How could he be a demon? Tian Shuang frowned when he heard Lin Ye's words. He stared at Lin Yi in disbelief. What does it have to do with me if you don't believe me? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, Tell me, who is attacking you? Just a bunch of evil and filthy people. Tian Shuang let out a cold snort and turned her head away. However, she was thinking about how she should escape. He glanced at them from the corner of his eye and found their weak point. Fan Shiji and Su Fuwu didn't care at all. They just stood to the side and watched him being interrogated. Tian Shuang could not help but smile. He was confident that he could escape from the crowd. Evil people. However, when Lin Yi heard Tian Shuang's words, he treated the so-called evil people as demons. It had to be said that sometimes things were just so coincidental. That's right, they're a bunch of evil people. Tian Shuang let out a disgusting voice. Those people are extremely evil and disgusting. It's disgusting to the extreme. Hiss. It seems like demonic creatures have appeared in the 9 prefectures. They must be eradicated. Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei's faces narrowed when they heard Tian Shuang's words. They made up their minds. Master, I'm back with Tianyi. Suddenly, a crisp sound rang out. Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei both raised their heads. To their surprise, they saw Yi Feng carrying a young girl and rushing over from afar, surrounded by numerous elders. Out of the corner of his eyes, Lin Yi found that the young girl was quite beautiful, but her vitality was weak and she was unconscious in Yi Feng's arms. If she was not treated soon, her life might be in danger. Elder Song, Elder Zhang. At this moment, when Tian Shuang saw those few elders, she was instantly shocked, and her eyes opened wide. Sect leader Tian Shuang, why are you here? When they heard Tian Shuang's voice, those few elders looked around for a moment. When they saw Tian Shuang, they were all shocked and ran over. However, when they saw Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei, they slowed down. Noticing this, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei looked at each other and walked over to Yi Feng. They knew that Tian Shuang still did not trust them. They had to let Tian Shuang know the truth before they could cooperate with her. Now, the entire Hailan state had been taken over by the demons. Only Tian Shuang knew the truth and everything that had happened in Hailan state. Hence, they had to cooperate with Tian Shuang. At the same time, they had to stabilize Feng Tianyi's injuries. Otherwise, Yi Feng might break down. After all, Cheng Shifei was just a spirit and could not help others heal. Hence, this task fell on Lin Yi. While Lin Yi was healing the young girl, Tian Shuang and the few elders started chatting. Sect leader Tian Shuang, why are you here? Yes, could it be that it is really like what the Lord said? Has the Hailan state been taken over by the demons? Those elders all began to shout in a chattering manner. Hearing this, Tian Shuang was stunned. What demons? The ones who defeated me were a mysterious force. Sigh, I don't know how they rose to power. Every one of them is very powerful. They also have a purple-black fog that could devour our divine runes. We're no match for them. At first, the few elders thought that it was Lin Yi and the others who had done it. However, when they heard about the purple-black fog, they all looked serious. The few elders looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They said helplessly, Sect leader Tian Shuang, I think that the people who defeated you were demons in disguise. Just a while ago, our sect leader and patriarch had turned into demons. They looked very ferocious. They even extended their evil claws to us. If it were not for the sudden arrival of the heavenly gate, we would have been killed. At this point, the few elders could not help but sigh. What demons? Tian Shuang frowned and asked in confusion, Are you all stupid? By the way, I haven't asked. What happened to the heavenly gate? Also, where is your sect leader? They are all dead. An elder sighed. They died a long time ago and were replaced by some demonic creatures. Just now, those demonic creatures were killed by the few of you. After pondering for a moment, the elders immediately recounted what had just happened. At first, Tian Shuang did not believe it. However, as he listened on, he could not help but believe it. Those elders had a good relationship with him. They would not lie to him. Secondly, his orthodoxy in the Hylon continent was already destroyed. What was the point of lying to him? Gulp. Are there really demons? After a long while, Tian Shuang gulped. When he recalled the purple-black fog, he was even more frightened. That's right. An elder sighed. Those demons are especially ferocious. They look even more ferocious and terrifying. By the way, sect leader Tian Shuang, since your sect was destroyed by the demons, you can ask those three for help. Suddenly, an elder pointed at Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei and said in a low voice, "Those two are very powerful experts. Moreover, from the looks of it, they seem to be filled with hatred for the demonic creatures. You can ask them to help you kill the demonic creatures in the Hylon continent. Revive the sect." Revive the sect? Tian Shuang laughed bitterly. Of course, I will avenge my brothers. However, reviving the sect is out of the question. Even if they really help me and kill all the devils, none of my disciples will be around. What's there to revive? End of chapter. Chapter 719. Seniors, I misunderstood you earlier. Tian Shuang sighed softly. In the end, he chose to believe the elders and Lin Yi. He came before Lin Yi and the others and bowed slightly. He had no choice. After all, his old friend was dead. If he wanted to return to Hylon continent, he could only rely on Lin Yi and the others. Even if his old friend was not the demons and had been framed by Lin Yi and the others, he would still make the same choice. I have to say that you've made the right choice. Lin Yi glanced at Tian Shuang and said in a deep voice, "Tell me the current situation of Hylon continent." Yes. Tian Shuang nodded slightly. After all, he had once been the leader of an orthodoxy. Naturally, he understood that time was of the essence. Without wasting any time, he told Lin Yi everything about Hylon continent. This included everything he knew about the mysterious organization. At this moment, Tian Shuang did not hide anything. If something went wrong and they were defeated in the end, he would have no chance at all. After learning about the mysterious organization, Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei looked at each other and sighed in relief. According to Tian Shuang's information, the demons were not very strong. They were about the same level as the ancestor. They were early gods. Although they could crush people above the 9 continents, they were not in any danger to Lin Yi and Cheng Shifei, who had fused hundreds of divine glyphs. Lin Yi rubbed his nose and said softly, "Brother Cheng, I'm in a hurry. It seems like the demons are about the same level. We can deal with them easily. Why don't we split up? I'll go to Hylon continent first. You go to the other continents to gather information. We'll each take 3 continents out of the remaining 6. How does that sound?" "Sure." Cheng Shifei glanced at Su Fuwu and Fan Shiji, who were nearby, and said in a low voice, "However, in this way, it seems like those 2 people won't be able to follow you to the 9 heavens. Let's see how lucky they are." Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders and said in a low voice, "Your sister-in-law is heavily injured. I'm afraid that your obedient disciple won't be able to break through during this period of time." Hearing this, Cheng Shifei's mouth twitched. He turned his head and saw that Yifeng was really taking care of Feng Tianyi. He couldn't help but feel depressed. Don't forget that the 2 of us aren't ordinary heavenly gods. Our cultivation system is completely different from this place. With so many divine inscriptions, we might be able to bring them away. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi said calmly, "I'll be in charge of Ocean Wave Province, Heaven Plume Province, Fireworm Province, and Earth Fiend Province. You'll be in charge of the other 4. Once everything is settled, we'll meet again in the spatial tunnel." "All right." Seeing that Lin Yi was so calm, Cheng Shifei wasn't worried anymore and agreed immediately. Only now did he realize that those rules and restrictions were all set up for the people of this world. However, they weren't people of this world. This point could be seen from the fusion of divine inscriptions. Perhaps, to them, the spatial passageway wouldn't have any restrictions. After making the decision, Cheng Shifei didn't hesitate at all. He bid farewell to Lin Yi and immediately left with Yi Feng and Feng Tianyi, rushing to the other provinces. This time, it was easy to say that they were going to get rid of the demons in the 8 provinces. However, it wasn't that easy to do it. Those demons were no different from ordinary people when they were hiding. Trying to find them was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. If they were unlucky, it might take a few years. After Cheng Shifei left, Tian Shuang was stunned. She frowned and looked at Lin Yi in confusion. "My lord," after a long while, Tian Shuang couldn't help but ask in confusion, "If that lord leaves, can you do it alone?" Lin Yi raised his eyebrows, shrugged his shoulders, and said, "If I say no, are you going to run?" Tian Shuang's face darkened. She was about to curse when she felt a powerful force hidden in Lin Ye's body. It made her heart palpitate. She thought about it again. Lin Yi knew the strength of that mysterious force, and still dared to take the initiative to let Cheng Shifei leave. He must have a card up his sleeve. She immediately swallowed the words in her throat and laughed dryly. How can I? I'm already very lucky that my lord is willing to help me. How can I run? As long as my lord is willing, I'm willing to be the vanguard. You sure know how to talk." Lin Yi glanced at Tian Shuang and waved his hand, indicating for the remaining elders to come over. "My lord," the elders came over and asked, "Is there anything you want us to do?" "I want to attack you. You can rebuild the heavenly gate yourselves. However, you must investigate carefully. If you discover the existence of demonic creatures again, get rid of them. If you can't deal with them, find me." Lin Ye's expression was indifferent. "If I know about the demonic creatures and you don't tell me." At this point, the biting cold air was like a sharp blade that was placed on the necks of the elders. Gulp! The elders gulped in fear. They swallowed their saliva and hurriedly said, "My lord, don't worry. We will take good care of the heavenly gate. We won't let the demonic creatures sneak in again. Do you want us to send people to investigate the other forces carefully? If demons appear in the other forces, we will send the message." Although the heavenly gate had lost more than half of its elders and even the gate master, their overall strength was still far superior to the other forces. Therefore, they could do this. This was the foundation of an orthodoxy that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. That's right. Seeing that all of you are so considerate, I will also give you some opportunities. Lin Shuyu's eyeball spun, and with a thought, a dozen elemental divine runes appeared and circled around the elders. "What? This?" "Thank you, my lord." The elders were shocked and immediately overjoyed. They all sat down and began to comprehend the runes in the air. Tian Shuang was stunned. He looked at the dozens of runes in shock. Gulp! How is this possible? How can someone comprehend more than 9 runes? Tian Shuang gulped. When she looked at Lin Yi again, the expression in her eyes turned extremely strange. He finally understood why Lin Yi was so confident, comprehending more than 9 runes and breaking the shackles of this world. That kind of strength had long exceeded their imagination. No wonder he alone could beat up the heavenly gate like this. If that's the case, doesn't that mean I can take back Hailan State? Thinking of this, Tian Shuang immediately smiled brightly. He moved closer to Lin Yi and took the initiative to massage Lin Yi's shoulders and back. He said flatteringly, "My lord, you have worked hard." In a chapter. Chapter 720. Lin Yi was pressed for time. He did not wait for the elders to integrate the divine patterns into their bodies. After seeing that they had comprehended it, he left with Fan Shiji, Su Fuwu, and Tian Shuang. However, Tian Shuang was surprised by the direction they were heading in. Although Lin Yi's primary goal was to kill all the demons, he could not relax the seal of the Forgotten Land. Lin Yi had a premonition that if he ignored the seal of the Forgotten Land, perhaps what would happen next would threaten the Divine Land. Therefore, Lin Yi asked Fan Shiji to lead the way and hurried toward the guardians of the Ash Cloud State. Half a day later, after passing through several teleportation formations and flying for 2 hours, Lin Yi and the others arrived in front of a verdant forest under Fan Shiji's lead. Sir, there's a barrier here. Logically speaking, only the guardians can enter. You can enter, but these two— Fan Shiji looked absent-minded as he spoke. Lin Yi immediately understood. Tian Shuang and Su Fu were not part of the guardians, so Fan Shiji did not want them to enter. Moreover, since there were guardians inside, they would definitely be more repulsed by outsiders. It would be fine if only one person went in, but if all three outsiders went in, the guardians inside might turn hostile and even chase Fan Shiji out. All right, I'll go in with you. Lin Yi nodded slightly and raised his hand. Dozens of divine patterns flickered and directly protected Su Fuwu and Tian Shuang. The two of you, stay here and don't wander around. If something happens, I won't be able to save you. Yes, sir. Su Fuwu bowed respectfully, but Tian Shuang pursed his lips, feeling rather gloomy. He was the sect leader of an orthodoxy, but now he was being treated like this. If it were not for the fact that he still needed to rely on Lin Yi, he would have left long ago. Noticing this, Lin Yi ignored him and immediately followed Fan Shiji into the forest. A seal shone in Fan Shiji's hand. In the next moment, Lin Yi and Fan Shiji completely entered the sea of trees, vanishing from Su Fuwu and Tian Shuang's sight. There's really a spirit formation channel here. Stepping into the barrier, what entered Xiao Chen's eyes was the same as the outside. The verdant sea of trees rose and fell. The scenery was rather magnificent. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi sniffed a few times, but his expression changed. My lord, if we go further in, we'll reach the Guardian clan's territory. The passage to the Forgotten Land is in the deepest part. Fan Shiji pointed with his finger and flew forward with a smile. However, he was stopped by Lin Yi. Something's wrong, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. There's the smell of blood in the space. The smell of blood? Hearing this, Fan Shiji was shocked. His nose twitched a few times, but he did not feel anything. He could not help but look bewildered. Hiss, there's definitely something wrong in there. Lin Yi rolled his eyes. With a thought, the power of his divine thought suddenly bloomed with a silver-white light, enveloping him and Fan Shiji. Let's go. Follow me, take a look. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi brought Fan Shiji and rushed forward. In just a few breaths' time, Fan Shiji's expression turned grave. He also smelled the faint smell of blood. As they got closer to the tribe of guardians, the bloody aura grew thicker. Something is definitely wrong. Oh my god, how could this be? The Guardian clan has never been born. How could someone find this place? Fan Shiji's expression turned grave. He could not help but worry about Violet Rainbow Island. The Guardian clan had never been born, but someone had found them and killed them. Violet Rainbow Island had always been in the outside world. Would they not be in danger? Let's keep going. Lin Yi sped up. A moment later, a building appeared before Lin Yi and Fan Shiji's eyes. The dense smell of blood assaulted his face, and it was especially pungent to the point that Fan Shiji was unable to open his eyes. Fan Shiji was horrified. How many people had been killed to have such a strong smell of blood? Looking down, Fan Shiji could not help but gasp. His face was filled with horror. What entered his eyes were broken limbs. Bright red blood had condensed into a river, floating among the buildings. Countless corpses were piled up like a small mountain. Even Lin Yi's expression turned grave. It was too bloody, too brutal. Ordinary people would not be able to do such a brutal thing. Could it be that the demons did it? Frowning slightly, Lin Yi's expression turned grave. If the demons had such strength and could easily kill an entire clan, then he would have to reconsider his plan to eliminate the demons in the 9 continents. Sigh. I shouldn't have let Qing Shifei go to the other 4 continents to eliminate the demons so early. I hope he can hold his ground. Since he used to be a great emperor, he must not be too weak to be able to suppress the continent he came from. There should be no problem. Thinking of this, Lin Yi immediately increased the power of his divine sense and brought Fan Shiji down. However, before he landed, Lin Yi awkwardly realized that the entire building was filled with rivers of blood. There was no place for him to land. After scanning the area, Lin Yi brought Fan Shiji down to a pile of corpses. Looking around, his face turned pale. He could sense that there were no other signs of life in this area except for him and Fan Shiji. How cruel! Fan Shiji looked angry and clenched his fists. Those are still children. There are also women and old people. They are all dead. Not a single one is left alive. The Guardians are isolated from the rest of the world. Many of them did not cultivate and were powerless. I didn't expect. Speaking of this, Fan Shiji could not help but sigh. Wait a minute. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. His eyes flashed as he looked around. Look, the way these corpses are piled up. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Fan Shiji looked in the direction of the corpses and was surprised. These corpses were not placed randomly. They were arranged in an orderly and tidy manner. The closer to the center, the bigger the pile of corpses. Even the direction of the blood flow had a special path. Noticing this, Lin Yi immediately flew up with Fan Shiji. Floating in the air, he looked down. Both Lin Yi and Fan Shiji were stunned by what they saw. Those corpses, together with the flowing blood, formed the head of a demon. In the center, there was a special light surging. This seems to be a kind of formation. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi stared at the pile of corpses. His eyes were cold. End of chapter. Chapter 721. Bloop, bloop, bloop. The sound of blood flowing gradually became louder, echoing in Lin Yi and Fan Shiji's ears. Fan Shiji frowned slightly and looked down. He saw that the blood that was originally flowing slowly was boiling, and many bubbles appeared. Sir, there seems to be something wrong with the blood. Fan Shiji's expression changed slightly, and he exclaimed, There seems to be something strange in the blood. Don't make a fuss. The cold light in Lin Yi's eyes became more piercingly cold, and he quietly waited for the blood to change. Bloop, 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 bloop. The blood boiled more and more, and the sound from it became louder and louder. Fan Shiji clenched his fists, and sweat kept flowing from his forehead. The thing that people were most afraid of was the unknown. Right now, no one knew what was hidden in the blood. Fan Shiji was suffering. If not for Lin Yi by his side, he would have fled long ago. Bloop, bang. All of a sudden, the blood boiled completely, and dozens of figures rushed out of the blood. Whoosh, bang, bang, bang. Soon after, loud and clear noises rose and fell. The figures that burst out from the blood were already densely packed and floating in the air. Fan Shiji looked up and immediately exclaimed. He was so frightened that his legs turned to jelly, and he could not even stand. If not for the power of divine thought, Fan Shiji would have fallen directly. Even Lin Yi's mouth twitched when he saw that group of creatures. It was too disgusting. Those creatures were all condensed from blood, and they looked like meatballs. They only had hideous faces, and their mouths were filled with sharp teeth that were filled with the smell of blood. On the surface of those blood balls, blood red and black smoke lingered, and it was nauseating. That's demonic aura. Hiss. Demons are indeed behind this. Lin Yi's expression was solemn. He glanced at the blood balls and could not help but sigh. If he guessed correctly, those blood balls were all condensed from the blood of the dead through the formation into the power of the sacrifice. In other words, those blood balls that could be called demonic creatures contained the lives of the Guardians. Aware of this, Lin Yi did not speak of his guess. If Fan Shiji knew, perhaps he would be even sadder. How disgusting. Fan Shiji's mouth twitched as he hurriedly asked, Sir, do you have a way to deal with these disgusting things? It's no big deal. Just break the formation. Lin Yi sighed. Undoing them was easy, but once they died, the entire protector race would be considered to have truly died. Hiss, 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 roar. Just as Lin Yi was sighing, the blood spheres that filled the sky turned their attention to Lin Yi and Fan Shiji, who were enveloped by the power of their consciousness. In the next moment, those blood balls opened their mouths full of sharp teeth and pounced forward like a dog seeing a bone or a moth flying into a flame. Even with the protection of his divine sense, Fan Shiji still cried out in alarm when he saw the blood balls filling the sky and pouncing towards him. His body went limp, and he directly closed his eyes. That kind of pressure was far from what he could bear. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, you should go too, sighing in his heart. Lin Yi put his palms together and no longer held back. In the next moment, the power of the divine pattern exploded. Light, fire, thunder, evil, auspicious, and all the other divine patterns that could cause damage to the demonic aura and evil aura were all summoned by Lin Yi. Through this period of research, Lin Yi had already understood that the power of the divine pattern was not something that could be unleashed by being more special, rare, or deeply comprehended. On the contrary, as long as one successfully comprehended the divine pattern, they could unleash their full power. Only when they were properly matched or used properly could they unleash shocking power. Although Lin Yi had comprehended thousands of divine patterns, and the power of the divine patterns was enough to completely crush these blood balls, some of the blood balls might escape. But in that case, some of the blood balls might escape, and no one knew what they were. In order to be safe, Lin Yi used all the divine runes that could deal damage to demonic chi and evil chi. In an instant, the aura of a saint rank filled the air, filling the entire space. Wong, swish, swish, swish. Those blood balls were like snow meeting the scorching sun. They could not resist at all and were turned into nothingness by the power of the sage level, disappearing from this world. Wong, wong, wong. After 20 breaths, the divine patterns in the world gradually dissipated and the power returned to normal. The blood balls in the air, the corpses on the ground, and the blood all disappeared completely. As for the so-called array and sacrificial offerings, they were all destroyed. Since the person was already dead, leaving the corpse would only add to the sorrow. It's time to wake up. After dealing with the blood balls, Lin Yi glanced at Fan Shiji and could not help but feel helpless. Too cowardly. At this time, Lin Yi hoped that the passageway to the 9 heavens could be opened quickly. In that case, Fan Shiji would not be able to break through to the heavenly god realm and would not need to follow. In comparison, Lin Yi's favorable impression of Su Fuwu was slightly higher. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Fan Shiji opened his eyes but was stunned. Rubbing his eyes violently, Fan Shiji's mouth was slightly open in shock. Sir, could it be that everything just now was an illusion? What about those corpses and those disgusting blood balls? Phew, they've all been destroyed by me. Lin Yi glanced at Fan Shiji and said in a low voice, "The Guardian clan you mentioned has been completely destroyed. Don't think too much about it." This side. After receiving Lin Yi's confirmation, Fan Shiji immediately showed a sorrowful expression. He was not familiar with the protectors and had only met them once. However, they were all protectors. Now that he saw them suffering because of their identity as protectors, he could not help but feel sad for them. He began to worry about his own safety. "Sir, the matter here is settled. Can you let me return to Purple Rainbow Island first? I'm a little worried." Fan Shiji bit his lips and looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of hope. "Then go back and prepare. When I return, I still have to clear out the demons in Fire Wyvern State. You can find out more information." Lin Yi said indifferently, "When the time comes, I'll leave you some means. As long as you don't meet demons that are similar in strength to me, I can guarantee that you won't die." "This all right." Hearing this, Fan Shiji could not help but smile bitterly. His original plan was to let Lin Yi accompany him back. If their clan really met with danger, Lin Yi would be much safer. He did not expect Lin Yi to let him go back alone. Fortunately, Lin Yi would leave him some means so that he would not be without support. "All right, quickly bring me to the sealed passage in the Forgotten Land." Lin Yi frowned and urged Fan Shiji to lead the way. In a chapter. Chapter 722. In the gloomy world, demonic chi lingered, and the pungent smell of blood filled the air. In a large hall, several figures shrouded in black fog sat upright. Puff! Suddenly, one of the figures trembled violently, and the black fog around it gradually became illusory. Cough, cough. Violent coughing sounds were heard, and a ball of black blood was spat out from the black fog. In an instant, its aura became much weaker. What's going on? Shueli and Mo, what's wrong with you? In the hall, several old and hoarse voices sounded. Damn it! Someone broke my blood demon pagoda formation. How is that possible? The Guardian clan has always been in a state of seclusion. How can others enter the barrier? Moreover, as far as we know, there are no more heavenly gods in the 9 states. The remaining peak true gods are almost all under our control. Even if someone accidentally enters the barrier, how can they break your formation? There's a problem. There's definitely a problem. Everyone, be careful. Perhaps there's a special situation in the 9 states. If this doesn't work, go into hibernation again and wait for the demon lord to descend. Yes, Ashcloud State, Guardian Clan. Looking at the spatial crack in front of them, Lin Yi and Fan Shiji's faces were ashen, and they did not say a word. Hiss, there's indeed a problem with the seal of the Forgotten Land. Sir, can you burst open this spatial crack? Seal up again? Fan Shiji asked. Seal it again? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows in surprise. Don't we need to enter the Forgotten Land to investigate? Phew, there's nothing in the Forgotten Land, but the demons slaughtered the Guardian clan and opened a passage. There must be something wrong. This, Fan Shiji could not help but hesitate. Forget it, just seal it. I don't have much time anyway. Touching his nose, Lin Yi suddenly remembered the problem of time and did not think too much about it. With a raise of his hand, the power of his divine sense instantly turned into a sharp blade, sweeping across the spatial crack. Bang! A crisp sound rang out as the crack in space crumbled and turned into countless fragments. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yi decided to use the power of divine sense to form a formation to seal off the spatial tunnel. Since these demons have been hiding in this world for so long, they must have a deep understanding of divine runes. If he used divine inscriptions to seal it, it would inevitably be broken. The power of spiritual sense was different. To demons, it was a completely new power. It would take at least a few years to crack it. During that time, Lin Yi could fight for more opportunities to become stronger in the Divine Land. After sealing the passage, Lin Yi and Fan Shiji carefully checked the space inside the barrier again. After confirming that there were no traces of survivors or demons, they rushed out of the barrier. Su Fuwu and Tian Shuang were still waiting outside the barrier. When they saw Lin Yi and Tian Shuang, they sighed in relief. You came out so quickly. Did anything happen? Su Fuwu grinned. However, Fan Shiji smiled bitterly when he heard that. What happened? At this moment, Su Fuwu and Tian Shuang felt a chill in their hearts. They immediately sensed that something was wrong. The protectors were slaughtered. Not a single one was left alive. Lin Yi said in a low voice, Moreover, it's very likely that it was the demons who did it. They even entered the Forgotten Land. What? They entered the Forgotten Land? Hearing this, Su Fuwu could not help but worry. Then my people, although it could be said that Su Fuwu abandoned his own clansmen and chose to follow Lin Yi out of the Forgotten Land, at least he could ensure the safety of his clansmen. He also left behind many bone patterns and precious techniques, enough for them to continue to rule over the entire Forgotten Land. However, if the demons entered the Forgotten Land with their strength and style, they would probably slaughter everyone in the Forgotten Land. It's hard to say. Lin Yi glanced at Su Fuwu and asked in a low voice, You want to go back first? Think carefully. If you go back, the power of the divine runes in your body might dissipate, and your cultivation level might drop. Moreover, you won't be a match for them. Hearing this, Su Fuwu could not help but smile bitterly. Lin Ye's words indicated that he would not return to the Forgotten Land with him. Thus, Su Fuwu could only take back his unrealistic thoughts. If Lin Yi did not follow him back, it would be useless even if he went back. Those demons were at least at the heavenly god realm. Would he go back to die? I hope that the seal of the Forgotten Land can help you get rid of them. Sighing inwardly, Su Fuwu shook his head and said, No, sir. Since I've decided to follow you, I don't care about anything else. Not bad. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi was quite satisfied with Su Fu's reaction. Then, he said in a low voice, "Don't worry. The Forgotten Land has existed for so long and was created by the so-called heavenly gods. There must be many secrets. If the demons want to slaughter the entire Forgotten Land, it will be very difficult for them. Cultivate well. When you reach the 9 heavens, you might be able to contact the heavenly gods who created the Forgotten Land and save your people." "Thank you, sir." Su Fu hurriedly bowed. He was also very excited. Waving his hand, Lin Yi gestured for Su Fu to get up. Then, he turned to Fan Shiji and said calmly, "Fan Shiji, do you want to return to Violet Rainbow Island first?" "He's leaving?" Hearing this, Su Fu was slightly surprised. He looked at Fan Shiji curiously. He did not understand why Fan Shiji would give up on following Lin Yi. "Sir, I have to go back." After pondering for a moment, Fan Shiji gritted his teeth and said, "I can't forget my responsibility as a guardian. I have to go back and guard the passage." "That's good." Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi said in a low voice, "You've been following me for a while. I won't leave you alone. These are the 99 divine runes. When you encounter danger, you can activate them. As long as you don't meet someone who has surpassed the heavenly god realm, they can protect you. If you can understand some of the divine runes, you'll be able to unleash more power. Even suppressing those demons won't be a problem." With that, Lin Yi waved his right hand, and the 99 divine runes landed on Fan Shiji's body. In an instant, Fan Shiji's body trembled. He felt that his body was filled with power. He could not help but clench his fists. He was extremely grateful. Although Lin Yi could not go back with him, he was very grateful that he could support him. At least, he could ensure the safety of Violet Rainbow Island and keep the seal intact. "Sir, I will remember this kindness in my heart. Goodbye." After taking a good look at Lin Yi, Fan Shiji's body flashed, and he sped off into the distance. He did not dare to stay any longer. Otherwise, he would most likely follow Lin Yi and forget his other responsibilities. End of chapter. Chapter 723. The ocean continent was one of the 9 continents. As the name suggested, most of the areas in this region had water pools. It could be said to be a world of water. Even some teleportation formations were set up in the water. When Lin Yi and the other 2 arrived at the ocean continent, there were special markings on every part of the water. There were even divine inscriptions in some places. Damn it, that guy wants to replace the Han Shuang sect and take the ocean continent's heavenly fate. Tian Shuang's expression changed drastically when she saw the divine inscriptions. She hurriedly urged, "Sir, can you move faster? If you are too slow and they take the ocean continent's heavenly fate, we will be in trouble." "Heavenly fate? What is that?" Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and looked at Tian Shuang in confusion. It was obvious that Tian Shuang wanted to hide the heavenly fate. The corner of Tian Shuang's mouth twitched. Her eyes spun as she gritted her teeth and said, "The heavenly fate represents the control of a province. If they obtain the heavenly fate, then the ocean province will become their territory. At that time, as long as they are in the ocean continent, they will have a lot of protection. It seems like we can't let them get the heavenly fate." Lin Yi frowned. Although he was not sure what the heavenly fate was, he understood that he could not let the demons get the heavenly fate. If we want to get the heavenly fate, we have to worship the heavens and earth at the center of the ocean continent, the ocean continent. Tian Shuang said in a deep voice, "It seems that the worship ceremony has already begun. We have to rush there within a day. Otherwise, the worship ceremony will not be interrupted." In order to ensure that the heavenly fate would not be taken away, Tian Shuang did not dare to hide anything. She told him everything she knew and guessed. Lin Yi did not hold back when he heard that. He immediately sped up and rushed toward the ocean continent with Tian Shuang and Su Fu. Lin Yi sped forward. In just 4 hours, a vast sea appeared before Lin Yi and the other 2. Tens of thousands of cultivators floated in the air above the sea. They seemed to be waiting for a grand event to begin. Arriving in the air above the sea, Lin Yi and the other two slowed down and gradually rushed towards the depths. Looking around, he saw that many cultivators were discussing the appearance of the new king. Ever since Han Shuang's sect had been destroyed and Tian Shuang had fled, the mysterious new faction had replaced Han Shuang and become the strongest faction in the Sea Wave continent. In fact, all the forces in the Sea Wave state were under its control. It was like a supergiant. Even at her peak, Han Shuang only controlled half of the forces. So many people have come. Seeing this scene, Tian Shuang was stunned. Her face was bitter. Back then, when the Sea Wave State held an event, there weren't that many people who came to support them. For a moment, Tian Shuang could not help but reflect. Could it be that they had done too badly? He could tell that when he passed by those cultivators, they were all praising the new king. Phew, I really don't know what these fellows are thinking. After a while, Tian Shuang's expression turned gloomy. Her tone was sour. That's enough. Hurry up and find those fellows and kill them all. This is still your territory. Lin Yi said telepathically. By the way, I suddenly remembered that your sect members are all dead. If we really kill the demons, can you control a state by yourself? Of course I have a way. The corner of Tian Shuang's mouth twitched. Her expression was extremely ugly. It was obvious that Tian Shuang had not thought of an exact method. Realizing this, Lin Yi could not be bothered. After all, his goal was to kill the demons and open the teleportation array in the Sea Wave state. As for other matters, he could not be bothered. After a while, more and more cultivators appeared. They stopped talking, and all of them looked solemn and dignified. Following their gazes, one could vaguely see that the divine runes had intertwined into a cloud shadow that was hidden in the air. Among the divine runes that filled the sky, a figure was faintly discernible. Around him, there were dozens of figures that had formed several altars with offerings placed on them. Each of the altars was shining brightly. A special power flowed out from them and gathered in the air, forming many divine runes. The divine runes that filled the sky were all formed by the altars. Hiss! As expected, it has already come to this step. Tian Shuang's expression changed slightly. She exclaimed softly, "My lord, as long as it absorbs all the divine runes, the Sea Wave state's heavenly fate will belong to it. At that time, even if we kill it, we will not be able to open the teleportation array that leads to the 9 heavens. The heavenly fate can only be transferred once in 100 years. If it succeeds, even if it dies, it will not be able to seize the heavenly fate for 100 years. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Hearing this, Lin Ye's expression turned solemn. He carefully sized up the divine runes and the altars around it. The 6 altars were like a hexagram array that gathered the power of the divine runes together. As for the cloud net formed by the divine runes, it did not contain any special power. It was more like a funnel. Through the cloud net, a special power was injected into the figure's body. At the same time, the altars were also extracting the life force and divine rune power from the surrounding cultivators. Of course, none of the cultivators noticed this. Many of the cultivators were still amazed by the new king's power. After sizing up the scene around him, Lin Ye's mind moved slightly. The power of his divine thought immediately enveloped his body. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi was like an arrow that had been shot from a bow. He quickly swept across the sky and pierced through the cloud net formed by the divine runes. Buzz! In an instant, the entire cloud net of divine runes shook violently. The figure inside suddenly froze. In the next moment, a shrill scream was heard. "What's going on? Oh my God! It seems like someone is going to interrupt the new king's heavenly fate seizing ceremony. How can it be? The people from the Han Shuang sect seem to have all died. How could someone be targeting the new king?" Seeing this scene, many cultivators were stunned. They were extremely shocked. On the 6 altars, those people's faces were solemn. They drew out their weapons and revealed their most powerful forms. They carefully sized up the sky. "Who is it? Why are you sneaking around? My lord, are you all right?" Someone even rushed into the cloud net formed by the divine runes, wanting to check on the figure's injuries. However, almost at the same moment that person entered the cloud net, another power of divine thought mixed with violent power pierced through like a bolt of lightning and instantly pierced through the figure. Bang! That figure exploded with a loud bang. Even the cloud net formed by the divine runes showed signs of shattering. In a chapter that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.